Hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning into the Doing Virtue podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Criste, and this is a special edition because for the first time in Doing Virtue history, we have 3 guests. So we are just breaking records left and right. Today, my guests are Sam Morales, Joe Wilson, and Cameron DeLaFleur from 100 Catholic Movies. Did I say that right, or is it 100 Movies for Catholics? I always get it backwards.
It's funny because on our intro, it's kind of just whatever flows better.
Whatever you're feeling.
Yeah. For every podcast, 100 Catholic movies, 100 movies Catholic.
Yeah.
Okay, so Catholics and 100 Movies. Anyway, it's a big Substack organization, and you also have a YouTube channel, and you have a podcast now, and yeah, growing and evolving. So it's awesome. We had Sam Morales on the show in I think it was episode 11, if I remember correctly, and we talked a lot about his background and movies and many other things. So, but he's back on today. I'm going to have him start out and just kind of introduce himself, who he is, what he does, and his involvement with the show. We'll do one at a time. We'll go Sam, Joe, Cameron, and then we'll get into the meat of the interview. So, Sam, take it away.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Sam. Went to Christendom College with Anthony and Joe and Cameron. It's a small town. So I graduated in 2020 with a degree in English, language, and literature. And I currently work for the college, have done so for the past since 2022. And it was in my first year working for the college in Rome, actually, as a male Rome coordinator, that I got the idea I had a lot of time in my hands, so I wanted to write some sort of book, and something about film, because I like to write on film. And I pitched the idea to our newly formed film group chat, which is still going very strong. A lot of members. A few people responded to it. I think I put some sort of document, like, I think my friend Charlie might have added some stuff to it. But it wasn't until like a few weeks later that Joe reached out. And was like, love your idea. But we should do it as a blog and not a book. And that was the smartest decision. So that was in April 2023. And we were nearing April 2025, which is a little surreal. We have gone through, we did 100 weeks straight of Friday posts, and then for the list, and then started adding new movie reviews, did some other series as well, got a bigger repertoire of writers, and so that was just huge. Yeah, that was only a few weeks ago that we hit 100, and then Cameron and Joe actually put out the official list, and that blew up. That just got restacked and just shared all over the place. And Joe also put out a press release, which that has put us on the map in ways that I think we largely did not expect. So we like almost doubled our audience.
Sweet.
In a week. So
wow. What was the press release? Is that
so
like news outlets?
Yeah. When I was at Christendom, I did a journalism internship with the National Journalism Center in DC. And so I was a little familiar with the process of putting out press releases, kind of getting the word out about stuff. And I thought, we've finished a really significant project here. And it's not just, listing 100 movies. We have reviews for each of these movies. We've got things where people can go, they can read about the movie and decide whether it's for them or not. And so I wrote up a quick press release, sent it out to several news outlets, radio shows, just sort of things in the Catholic world. And was kind of thinking, well, if someone writes back, if we get like a little write-up in someone's online newspaper, great. We've gotten hits from that, from EWTN, National Catholic Register, Relevant Radio. It's been really amazing, just the impact that's had, because this is a story people want to read about. People like hearing about, there's a list of good movies. We can go find good movies to watch. And there's been a lot of public interest. Like Sam said, in just about a week, we doubled our subscriber base. We're still growing at a pace faster than we ever have before, which is really cool. And it was just sort of one of those spur of the moment ideas that I had that really paid off a lot, like our first viral review with
Journey to Bethlehem.
Yeah.
Oh, no, yeah, right. I remember that.
Yeah. But those sort of things, honestly, have been, at least for me, the things that it's just like a quick inspiration. Oh, okay, let's do this and see what happens. Have been the sort of the coolest things and the things that have grown the most. So it was a fun experience.
Awesome. Before we get into that deeper, you came here from Ohio, not specifically for this, I don't think. Maybe you did, but if you did, thank you. And if you didn't, I'm not offended. But thanks for coming from Ohio and being here. But yeah, what's your background? What's your involvement with the project?
Yeah.
Other than being the press release guy.
So I'm Joe Wilson. I grew up in Indiana. I live in Ohio now. Graduated from Criste in 2018. Went from there to graduate school at Baylor University in Texas, which is where I was when Sam brought up the blog project. And at the time, I was working on my dissertation. 2 years later, still am working on my dissertation. So I knew how difficult a book-length project could be, and how much motivation it takes, and how quickly that motivation drains away. And so I thought, if we split this up and do just one post a week, 1,000 to 1,200 words a week, that's nothing. We can do that. We can split it among all sorts of people, all sorts of our friends and writers. We got so many talented writers in our community who've contributed for us. And so I proposed that to Sam, and we kind of just took off from there. I've since moved back to Ohio, got a lot of family in Ohio. I teach Latin and history at Veritas Classical Academy in Marietta, Diocese of Steubenville. So I've been getting in some of the church life there, which is interesting. Going to Christendom, I never thought that I'd be living near Steubenville, but it is what it is.
Yeah. We can't all be loyal. Yeah.
I know. Hey, Dr. Ben Reinhardt's there too, and I've met up with him a couple times. So
nice. Yeah, I've reached out to him a few times. There was one day I messaged him. It was like, hey, you should come on the show sometime and whatever. And then like an hour later, he was on Pints. I was like, okay, all right. So then I followed up the message and I was like, never mind. Just saw the interview with Frad. Forget that. And then it was a while later. This is probably a month ago. And I messaged him again, and then the next day he had a big interview with, it's his father-in-law, but Scott Hahn, and they were talking about his new book, and I was like, okay, I really need to time my asks better. Let's get something on the schedule before you have a big release.
Yeah.
So, anyway, cool. Thanks for being here. Cameron, take it away.
Yeah, so I graduated in 2017 from Christendom, grew up in Front Royal with Anthony here, and was just kind of seeing the blog from the outside in the beginning. I thought it was really cool. I was getting back into really watching movies. I always enjoyed movies as a kid, but in the beginning of 2023, I just was starting to get back into them. Got into the app called Letterboxd, which is basically like a social media app for movie watching. And then got added to their group chat and got the kind of insider look at the project. Was very interested. One day reached out to Sam. I was just like, hey, you looking for writers? And I think I wrote on The Village for the first time. And then just started helping them out here and there with social media. And then eventually joined them in this venture. And it's been awesome.
Nice.
Yeah, it's really cool, especially now since we've hit our 100 and we've started blowing up and having these interviews. It's very real. Like we actually achieved something quite remarkable, and just the amount of people that are reaching out to me and everyone I talk to is like, oh yeah, the list, man. Like that's cool. Like I looked it over and yeah, I think we're at 500 likes, which is crazy on Substack. I mean, I think our most popular article before that was 30. So
was the Journey to Bethlehem?
Yeah.
So that one didn't get a lot of likes.
Hundreds of comments, 500 likes, people, everyone. It's blown up. So it's been really cool. I think we're just getting started too. So I think it's very exciting times. Happy to be here.
Yeah, for sure. So you have the list of 100 movies. How did you guys go about picking what those movies would be, or kind of filtering / maybe monitoring either the articles that are being written or the movies that are being picked? What was that process like? Because presumably it wasn't entirely random. It wasn't just people writing in saying, hey, I loved this movie, I'm going to write an article, and then you publish it, right? So
sometimes
it was closer to that than you would think. Yeah. We started off with sort of an idea and a list of things that we wanted to do. There's some movies obviously that have to be on this list.
Right.
You have to have a start. But we intentionally did leave it open for our friends to pitch us articles and ideas. And that makes the list a sort of more well-rounded experience for people. It's got all sorts of movies, from Russian art films to horror movies to superhero movies. And then, of course, good old-fashioned saint stories. And I think even like our fourth movie, Goodbye, Mr. Chips, was something that I had never thought might go on the list, but I forget who wrote that one. Danny Boyle wrote that one. Yeah, he made a pitch for it and was like, yeah, that fits the list. So we took it, which is why the list isn't ranked. I repeat, the list is not ranked.
Yeah,
the amount of comments.
Oh my gosh.
We had another blogger write a whole post that was just angry about our ordering. And I just like type in his comment section, hey, the list isn't ranked. Like, you're right.
You got The Passion at 50 something.
Ben-Hur is the 100th movie?
Yeah.
What?
Actually, you could totally use that as fuel. You could say, like, please send us your updated 100 movies list ranked accordingly.
We already get those.
We've had someone like drop another 100 in the chat.
They
It's
literally
I was
did.
Like, whoa.
And they had some movies that we're planning on putting, but it was just like...
Is
I think
this
Joe
Dr.
wrote
Flippin?
us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Joe was like, I think we have the next list made for us, guys.
Yeah, our job's done.
Right.
See ya.
Have you reached out to any of those people to say, hey, we'd love you to write an article if you have a movie?
Yeah. Well, it was convenient because like we're doing a series on John Ford now, and then there's this guy, and I'm pretty sure he lives in Ireland, and he was just writing like this very impassioned response like to the list, and was just like, I want to like talk about Quiet Man for a movie, Catholic movie club or whatever. And like I had all this stuff about the history of the area that like it takes place and stuff. I was like, do you want to write on this? So that article will be coming out soon.
Nice.
Yeah. So yeah, it's always funny who will reach out and who's willing to do stuff.
Well, and it's neat too because you can kind of redirect someone's passion that might be initially kind of against the project. And then you're like, oh, okay, yeah, we'll publish. If you have an article that you feel strongly about and it's appropriate, we'll publish it. And then all of a sudden they went from criticizing you to kind of being part of your group.
Exactly.
Yeah, or you challenge them and then they go silent.
Yeah.
But this guy was definitely one of the nicer comments. I was like, oh, this dude seems like he knows what he's talking about.
So what has been your biggest source of followers? It's because it's primarily the Substack, right? Mm-hmm. But have you seen a big increase with putting stuff on YouTube, with I don't know, with I guess just social media in general, or is it primarily just Substack reshares? Because it seems like what you're doing on Substack is pretty unique. There's not very many groups that have 100 Catholic movies. There are groups that have movies, and there's Catholic groups, but that's kind of a niche thing from what I've seen.
Mm.
I think some of our big things that have driven traffic is just when someone posts an article about us. Like we had, what was the early on? We had someone post an article about us, and then recently I think it was Catholic Vote did an article, and that
I think I saw something from
drew us a lot of traffic. And it's funny how opinionated everyone is. Like once people see the list, everyone's like, "No, this is not a Catholic movie. This is a Catholic movie. Like, where's this one?" But like,
Reagan's not.
I guess
there?
Reagan.
all press is good press, and it's. I really enjoy just seeing the conversation. Like it's something that everybody gets excited and everybody has an opinion about.
Yeah.
Once you see this list, everyone I've talked to has had something to say, good or bad. Like, oh, that's a great list, or you had that one on there, or where's that one?
I think I remember the only thing that I remember pushing back on. I think someone published a article on Napoleon, and that was right around the time. I think that was before you came on, or maybe it was after. And I remember reaching out to, actually, I think it was probably
right
you
before,
because it was on Instagram. Mm-hmm. But I think I remember being like, hey, I'm not saying that this article shouldn't be published. I just know that there's graphic scenes in it. And so obviously you guys had the disclaimer, so that's fine. But I was like, I wonder if it would be worthwhile to like have an episode on this and talk about like what's the line, and like should there be 100 Catholic or 100 movies that Catholics shouldn't watch, and like would this qualify, or do we just say it has a scene, we gave you the disclaimer and whatever.
We just did that.
Right. I saw that for your next 100 movies.
Or Severance. Yeah, I did a review. Well, I had put out a first season review a little bit ago, and then I wrote my season 2 review, and someone was just like, they were just writing like, it's this like, And it was actually just because of the language, because like aside from his few scenes, it's a relatively clean show. But they were just like, this just has such disgusting language. How could you recommend this? And I literally just said like, it's rated TVMA, and at the beginning of each episode it says what it's rated TVMA for, and I was just like, beyond that, I don't know what to do.
Yeah,
for you. In so many words.
With Napoleon with all of our new movie reviews, the sort of level of trust that we have in our writers kind of cuts both ways, because I don't think any of the three of us saw Napoleon, certainly not when it was in theaters.
Right.
Yeah.
And so our friend went out and saw it and really enjoyed it, wrote up an article, and we were like, all right, well, we trust you, and we published it. And maybe in hindsight, looking at the IMDb Parents Guide or something and saying, okay, there's a couple of things, putting a disclaimer would have been good. And I try to do that at least with my post when I am recommend, especially if I'm recommending something.
Sure.
I want to tell people it's got this in it. So when I inevitably write about Braveheart, there's going to be a disclaimer at the beginning. It just is what it is.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting spot to be in, because you're promoting yourselves as these are 100 movies that Catholics should watch. At the same time, we're also not saying that there's zero problems with them. You're saying like overall they fit the criteria. But if we really go through like, is there any language? Are there any sexual scenes? Is there any of that? Well, no, because then the list would be very different, which maybe is a good thing. Maybe it'd be better to have kind of a puritanical list, but like then Braveheart's not in there. Yeah. Then, arguably all of, Severance is in there, even though it's just language. And then people have different kind of barriers for what goes for language and TV shows and all this stuff. So,
well, it ended up just being kids movies and saint movies at that point.
And I think those lists have already been done. Like, there's many, National Catholic Register, many articles that do like, Catholic movies. And something we're trying to do is, what I really liked about our list is we had such a variety. You had silent films, you had superhero films, you had 80s comedy, you had movies made in the 2020s. Trying to find the best of what's there without being filtering everything out. So it's just these set movies that everyone already knows. Like maybe people find something that's new, that's edifying, and that's really exciting. So
and if you look at the Vatican list too from 1995. There's movies on there that have some shocking violence. There's movies on there that have some sexual themes to them, even some nudity. Nothing pornographic, and that's our goal for this list as well. We don't want to recommend someone porn.
Generally
movies,
good.
Generally a good thing not to do. The Vatican list also has films that, frankly, I don't think ought to be on the Vatican list. So it's a thing about one of these lists. We can have discussions, and I love having discussions with people about what should or should not be on the list. And I think with our second list, we're expanding that a little bit. We're saying...
So what's the second list about? It sounds like you're going to be doing miniseries as opposed to individual films.
We're organizing it a little bit better, We're doing sort of 5-movie miniseries on a specific theme. So we start with a filmmaker, John Ford. Great Irish Catholic filmmaker, started in the 20s, directed movies all the way into the 60s. And just he's one of the masters of cinema. He's someone that people as different as Orson Welles to Steven Spielberg has cited as one of their greatest teachers and masters of the form of cinema. His movies are so painterly. You can see there's a great scene in Steven Spielberg's sort of autobiographical movie, The Fabelmans, that features John Ford. I forget if it's in that scene or if it's something that he told in an anecdote, but Ford told him, go look at that painting on the wall. And when you can tell me why those cowboys are in that position, why the sky looks like that, then you're ready to make a movie. And so that attention to the visual aspect of it is gorgeous in Ford. But his stories are also really multi-layered. There's a lot of emphasis on community in there, community building, the importance of working together towards a common goal. And not, you think of the Western, you think of the cowboy as sort of this lone hero. You think, Clint Eastwood out and just by himself in the wilderness. John Ford's Westerns and all of his other movies, they're about building this community, bringing that outlaw, that individual into communion with others. And so we're building, starting with him. It's a great starting point. Other things might be on genre. We might do a horror series, for example. Got a couple of things in mind, including we would be able to do The Exorcist on the second list because we've told people up front, this is going to be a bit different of a list, and we'll give you disclaimers if they're needed. But if we have something that's a bit more disturbing, that might have that one scene that you've got to skip or whatever, we're going to be okay with that if the greater theme of the movie, the greater purpose of the art is edifying, is in line with Catholic morality.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember like when you get the weekly email, and sometimes there's more. A lot of them are movies that I've seen, but I hadn't really thought about, or it's like movies like It's a Wonderful Life or A Man for All Seasons, where I'm like, this is already in my top 10.
Yeah.
But then you read an article that kind of is a different take on it. Like this actually wasn't from y'all, but it made me. I read whoever wrote the article on It's a Wonderful Life. I was like, oh yeah, it's really good. I need to watch that for Christmas time. And then I remembered that I think it was John Clark, wrote an article for National Catholic Register on how Mary is actually the main character, or how she should be viewed as the main character. And I was like, oh, like that. I don't know if I agree with that, but that totally flips the way that I watched the movie.
Yeah.
And I just had never thought of it before. So it is interesting how even a movie that you watch every year that you really like, you read an article by someone who's thought about it and kind of done some research, and it makes the movie way better.
Yeah.
And I've personally benefited from that. There was a movie that you reviewed, trying to remember the name, but it was about the Sistine Chapel, Michelangelo. Is it Rose? Is there a rose in the title?
The Agony and the Ecstasy.
Agony and the Ecstasy. I don't know what movie I'm thinking of, but I watched that, and I think if I had just come across that on Prime or something, I maybe would have started it, but I've been like, is it worth it? I don't know. But I was like, okay, Cameron watched it, he reviewed it, I liked his review, and then watching the movie, I was like, this is actually a really good movie.
Yeah.
And it kind of is a slow burn. Like, there's not a ton of action. There's not these huge climactic scenes. But at the end of the movie, you're like, wow, that's a really good movie, and extremely Catholic.
Yeah.
So it's great, and I think it's awesome to be able to open people up to movies either that they've seen and it makes them look at it in a different light or under a different lens, or movies that they've never seen and is like just a classic. So.
Yeah.
The mark of a good movie is you can watch it over and over again. You can see something new every time. I when I watch a movie, I want to be thinking about it a week later. Like that's something I really enjoy.
Yeah. Do you all have like a movie, or maybe a movie or two in mind that kind of fits that criteria of like, I can watch this every year or multiple times a year? And I think you mentioned yours when you were on the show. It was one of the first 20 movies you did. I think it's
Tree of Life. Probably.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's what you said yours was. Do you all have one in mind that's like, yes, this is my movie?
I've got a couple.
Okay.
I'll pick I could say The Lord of the Rings or A Man for All Seasons, but I'll pick one that's a little more of a niche pick, and that's Hail Caesar, directed by the Coen brothers.
Okay.
It came out in 2016. I was at Christendom, and on my Tuesdays and Thursdays that year, I had an 8:30 class and a 2 p.m. class. And so very often I'd go catch like an 11:30 movie in between classes. Nice. And Hail Caesar was one of those. And it just was so awesome, so beautiful in many ways. The story of the movie revolves around the head of a film studio in Hollywood. And he's trying to both be a good husband and a good father, a good Catholic. The scene starts in the confessional, or the movie starts in the confessional, but also juggle all these different responsibilities that he has to keep the studio running. And it's very well crafted, extremely funny, and just beautiful how all these different threads tie together in the end, and how there's a real theme of divine providence in there. Just a beautiful scene where he's pondering this decision that he's got to make, and they're shooting a movie, a biblical epic about the life of Christ, and he ends up, the music's swelling, and he ends up on the Golgotha set of the movie as he's contemplating this decision. And that shot, that scene, I can close my eyes and I can see it, and it just washes over me. It's giving me goosebumps right now. And it was literally the next day I drug a van full of friends to go see this movie again with me. We left it was like the Dorm Wars a cappella competition. We left early. I dragged literally like 7 friends in my minivan back to the theater to go watch this with me. And it's one that I can and do watch just about every year. I go back and I watch it whenever I want a few laughs. I'll either put the movie on or even just look up a couple scenes on YouTube. Especially the one where the priest, the rabbi, and the Orthodox pastor are arguing about arguing about who Jesus is and whether putting Jesus on film is a good idea or not. So that's the one I would pick. I would recommend to everyone.
So this is definitely a heavier fare, but it's something I've seen last year for the first time, and I'm dying to see it again. The only problem is it's 4 hours, it's black and white, and it's in Russian. But Andrei Rublev, I've been going through the filmography of Tarkovsky. He's a Russian Orthodox director. He's had 3 movies on our list. That it's about as dense and philosophical as you can get with a filmmaker. You think of like a 5-minute take of like water just flowing by with like maybe some objects in it and just sitting there.
Isn't that how Solaris starts?
Yes.
There's a stalker scene like that.
Yeah,
too.
no, yeah, and so, but what I really like is how he forces you to slow down, stop. Get out of your hyper fast life with your phones and your screens and things moving at a million miles an hour. He forces you to kind of slow down and just sit with him in this scene and just be still. And Andrei Rublev it's basically about the 15th century Russian Orthodox iconographer. It's loosely based on his story, and it's just a backdrop of Russian Orthodoxy, Russian politics. You've got epic battle scenes with like the Tartars coming down from the steppes and like burning cities. You've got Andrei Rublev as a monk, like taking a vow of silence to atone for a sin that he's done. So you've got everything. You've got love, you've got hatred, you've got betrayal, you've got pretty much the full gambit of human emotions. So it's not something that you can just like flick on, stick up your feet and laugh at, but it's something it's equivalent to reading like a really good book, like a C.S. Lewis book or something. It just really gets you and really makes you think. And I love it. It's a challenge, but I think it's very rewarding.
Yeah. When I first saw that one, I compared it to Dostoevsky.
Yeah.
Partially just because it's Russian, but also because Dostoevsky, you can't just, read a couple pages before bed at night. Like it demands study. And it's the same thing with Andrei Rublev or with Stalker, one of his other movies. It's one of the things you've got to come back and you've got to commit to studying this film to really get everything out of it.
Like you see it for the first time, and that's like you need to see it a couple more times before you have any kind of understanding.
But also, it's going to be like a year before you try it again. Great Lenten movie.
There you go.
Come back every year.
So you guys recently had Trent Horn on your podcast. How did that come about, and how did you prepare for having him on? Was there kind of a set list of questions that you were like, we have to get him to talk about this or answer this, or he seemed like he riffed quite a bit in a good way, as all good Catholic
a lot of the
apologists can do. And I feel like maybe he answered some of your questions without knowing it. He kind of led into the next thing, or like kind of saw the next objection and answered it. But how did, I guess, were you kind of heading that up?
Well, I think it was actually during our last in-person meeting, which would have been when?
That was in...
Was it November?
November.
I want to say,
yeah. Or maybe, was it Homecoming? Maybe it was October.
Yeah, anyway, no, it would have been Homecoming time. I was trying to think of why you would have been down here.
Anyway.
But we were coming up with like goals for next year and stuff. And Joe just mentioned like, we should get more like Catholic guests or whatever. And he mentioned Trent Horn, and I was not too familiar with Trent Horn, just like through like secondhand people talking about him. And he was like, he's like a big fan of movies. He's been doing a lot of smaller podcasts. So at some point within the next month or so, I just reached out on his website, and he had like a email or whatever. And I was just like, hey, we have this podcast, this is what we do. We'd love to have you on or whatever. And he reached back relatively quickly. And we had a few delays in actually getting it off the ground. But I guess it was about a month ago at this point that we recorded.
Just about.
Yeah, so great conversation, great guy. Yeah.
Yeah, and like you said, he answered a lot of our questions without us even bringing them up. We had questions that we'd put together when we first reached out to him and we're trying to schedule a thing, he just put out a video about Mel Gibson Mel Gibson on Joe Rogan, I think.
Yeah.
And so we had that question, but by the time we actually talked to him, it was over a month later, and we were like, maybe drop that one. But other than that, on his podcast all the time, he uses pop culture and movie references a lot. You can tell that this is something that he's passionate about and that he's open to using in an apologetic context. He does Free for All Friday podcasts, which are less about apologetics and more just about things. He talks about comic books and comic book movies on there all the time.
Yeah, he's kind of a comic book and movie nerd.
Yes.
Which I kind of assume that he's a nerd because I think most apologists are nerds, to some degree. Mm-hmm. But especially the Free for All Fridays, he'll start talking about something. Like I remember he had one where he talked about sand. Yeah, I think and maybe he had someone on, but they were talking about like building sandcastles and like the philosophy, and I was like, "This is probably the nerdiest thing I've ever heard." Like I've never once thought about this being philosophical.
Yep.
Leave it to Trent.
But and we had him on, and it just flowed pretty naturally. Mm-hmm. Although sometimes we did kind of cut to different questions or whatever. But I didn't realize that he had sort of a background in filmmaking. A lot of our guests on the podcast are filmmakers, and so we start with like, "What's your filmmaking journey?" And when I asked him that question, I was expecting more of I watched a lot of movies with my dad. But no, he was like, no, in fact, I was what was he, the cinematographer, the editor?
Yeah, there was like some comedy.
He's credited on IMDb
for
something.
So we're like, oh, okay, well, wow, all right, we're getting that aspect too. But him just being willing to talk about what's wrong with comic book movies these days, what's wrong with Christian movies these days, how we can use movies as a tool for apologetics, and what like a really Catholic movie looks like, as opposed to what a Christian movie in practice really kind of looks like today.
I thought he did a really good job of making that distinction, because I think most Catholics they recognize that Christian movies aren't great, but they feel guilty because Catholics feel guilty about everything. But they're kind of like, well, it's a Christian movie. It's a good company. It's a good story. We should support it.
Yeah.
And then this other movie comes out and you're like, yeah, it's like this huge cinematic, like epic masterpiece, but there's a scene in it, so we shouldn't go support it.
Yeah.
And it's like, you kind of see people struggling with, do we want good, like what is good art? What is good entertainment? Where do you draw the line? And I thought I'm not going to be able to do it as good of a job, but I thought he did a really good job of laying out what entertainment should be, and then how, like, I think essentially, if I remember correctly, his differentiation was that Christian movies focus on preaching and the faith, and then story is secondary. Whereas actual good art can tell the story, and at the end of it, you can as the audience pull out Catholic themes, or pick up on Catholic subtleties, or maybe it's obviously like very directly Catholic. But I was thinking about this the other day. Like, me and a couple of my friends were talking about A Man for All Seasons, and we were like, yeah, it's about a Catholic saint, but it's not super Catholic.
Yeah,
obviously, like there aren't like tons of scenes that have mass or confessions or references to biblical things, but the whole time you're like, this is the most Catholic thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really good example of like it's focusing on the story, and it is Catholic and it has Catholic themes, but it's not hitting you in the face with like Catholicism all the time.
Well, and you bring up,
and that's how Christian. Go ahead.
You bring up A Man for All Seasons. What's interesting about that movie? It's written by Robert Bolt, who's an atheist. It's directed by Fred Zinnemann, who's a Jew, and its lead actor is Paul Scofield, who is Anglican. The sort of lead creative team on that movie wasn't Catholic, and so they didn't have that drive to proselytize, to preach.
Right.
They told the story for what it was, and it just so happens that the story is incredibly Catholic, and they because of their fidelity to the story and to the themes, it shines out. And I think that's something that, not that when you're a Catholic and you're a filmmaker, you should like take off your Catholic hat and try to make like as un-Catholic a movie as you can. But looking at it and thinking, all right, my job isn't the apologist. My job isn't the preacher. My job is to tell a story, to show characters that portray virtue, vice, human struggle, to have themes in there. Why make a movie if you're not going to have some kind of theme to it? But not hitting your head over hitting the audience over the head, especially in this day and age, is counterproductive. You've got to let them, and I think this is a big thing in marketing as well, right? You've got to let them come to the conclusion themselves. When they buy in, when they think they have an insight into what you're saying, people grasp onto that and like it a lot more than if you just lay it out. And that's a problem with a lot of Christian movies these days. And a lot of it comes down to, and Trent talked about this a little bit as well, the difference between Protestant and Catholic sort of approaches to evangelization. Protestants are all about the word. If you hear the word and the Spirit hits you, then you'll have a conversion experience. Whereas Catholics are much more about building a culture, a lot of symbolism, a lot of sort of sensuality in the best sense in Catholic worship and in Catholic evangelization. And that's something that I think is uniquely, film is uniquely adapted to work in that sort of more Catholic context. And so that's why there can be great Catholic films, but fewer great Christian films, as much as, you know, something like Angel Studios tries and succeeds from time to time. They make watchable movies, which I can't say of Pure Flix.
Right. And I think it depends on the genre too. Like, I know that a lot of people did or didn't like Mother Cabrini, or did or did not like, and it's like, okay, but you're being critical of a Christian company making a Catholic movie.
Yeah.
So, fair.
Yeah.
But also, they're not going to be able to portray a Catholic in the correct way, most likely.
Yeah.
But then I know a lot of people are fairly critical of The Chosen. But it's the same thing. Yeah, you're telling the story of Christ, so it's going to be very biblical, very obviously kind of Catholic. But if you're telling it from a Christian perspective, you're not going to be following the scripture in the same way. You're not going to be interpreting it the same way that the magisterium does. Now, whether those are overall a plus or a minus, I think is a different question. From what I've seen with The Chosen, regardless of the, you know, maybe historical inaccuracies or kind of biblical tangents that they might go on, I think it's a really interesting insight into what Christians view the Old Testament and Christ as. And also, I think it's a really cool way to kind of bring people into the fold who are watching, and they know Jonathan Rumi's a Catholic, but watching this and then seeing, the disciples actually have personalities and lives. And maybe those lives and personalities are totally inaccurate, but it does give you insight that, there's more going on to the story than just Jesus going into a crowd, working a miracle, everyone's shocked, and then he leaves. It's like there's all this inner drama, inner fighting, inner conflict, and I don't know of any other show that's really done that well. And so I think it's neat that they're at least trying. Whether they succeed or not, I think might be a different question. But
and we need Jesus stories that show all the different sides of Jesus. So I think what The Chosen does really well is it makes Jesus very approachable. You feel like you could be friends with chosen Jesus.
Yeah.
Whereas some of the other movies, I'm thinking of The Gospel According to Matthew, which is Pasolini. I was going to say Fellini. That's not right. Pasolini.
It was very different. I think.
That one is a very very different filmmakers. That one is just a very straight adaptation of Matthew. The words are brought straight from the gospel. Jesus does not seem very approachable. He's almost like a John the Baptist kind of wild preacher in the wilderness kind of figure. You think of the Jesus of Nazareth miniseries from the 70s. He's a little bit more aloof, a little bit more mystic. You've got The Passion of the Christ, which focuses really deep on, Jesus' suffering and his strength through the suffering, but also the sort of vulnerability that he goes through there. Something like The King of Kings, which, as the title suggests, has a bit more of a regal Jesus. I like having a wide variety of Jesus stories that you can look at. You can get the disparate aspects because Jesus ultimately is God and God is infinite. We can't have a perfect Jesus movie because you can't reduce God to one thing.
Right. Except for The Passion. But
the Passion's perfect.
Why is that not your number one movie? I was listening to an interview that Matt Fradd did with Alex Jones, not of Frog Memory, but CEO of Hallow. And he was talking about how that's a struggle for, I assume, Jim Caviezel, but also for Jonathan Rumi, because they have put a face on an otherwise faceless person. And because becoming close to Christ is that personal relationship for, I think, Christians, but even Catholics too, they have come to identify him as Jesus because that's who he's playing, and he's not really known for a lot of other roles. Like it's not like he had this massive career like Jim Caviezel did, but before he was in The Passion. And so he's like, yeah, I think this is something he's going to deal with the rest of his life, with people coming up to him and being like, I know you're not Jesus, but also when I pray, I see your face, and like I feel like you should be able to heal me, and it's just kind of like I can't, but I'm happy to talk to you, you know? But I think that's a sign of the show's success, is that if you're praying and all of a sudden you start seeing Jonathan Rumi's face, while that might not be the best thing, it does show that like you've identified him as Christ. Like he's playing a accurate enough portrayal of Christ in the show that you're starting to have this relationship with someone who is just an actor, but he's portraying a real historical figure. So yeah, that it's interesting. It's kind of fascinating to see what they're doing with it, and I think that I think they'll continue to grow. And it sounds like they want to do miniseries and spin-offs and things. So yeah, good for them.
And they are no longer with, I just found this out, that they're no longer with Angel Studios, The Chosen.
I heard something about that. Did they have like a separate deal with Prime now?
Yeah, they got bought by Amazon, I think.
Oh, really?
Or
Wow.
something.
Okay.
Something big bought them.
Oh,
Interesting.
Well, there you go.
Hopefully they didn't give over creative control.
Yeah.
I doubt it. I doubt
Yeah,
Dallas
well-
Jenkins. Well,
From what I've been seeing, Angel Studios is demanding more creative control, and they're making some decisions that that might take them a bit more down the pure flicks route. I'm really hoping they don't go that way. But early on, their idea was basically crowdfund great filmmakers and let them do their thing. Let Alejandro Monteverdi go make Cabrini or Sound of Freedom. But it seems like with a lot more of their especially the stuff that they're producing in-house, because Sound of Freedom was kind of made and then bought by them, they're starting to meddle a little bit more. And I do believe that they are pretty heavily LDS inspired, which, you know, is what it is. I work with a lot of LDS folks, and I love them and appreciate a lot of their contributions, but they aren't Catholic. And they're going to have a very, very different understanding of the Godhead and of Jesus Christ and things. And so I think there's a lot more of a sort of social gospel kind of mission focus that we're going to see. Things like Sound of Hope that I saw last year, which was about adoption, adopting foster kids. I think we're going to see a lot more of those sort of more like inspirational kind of movies. Yeah. And unfortunately, inspirational films generally aren't very good art because it doesn't take a lot of effort to inspire someone in that. You can have a Thomas Kincaid painting or a Hallmark greeting card, and that can be inspiring.
Right. Or you can make a documentary.
Or you can make
that's
a documentary,
essentially telling the same true story.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's something interesting you brought up. You said something about prosperity, and I think that, I don't know if Trent Horn brought this up in your interview, but I definitely have heard other people talking about one of the main differences between the way that Catholics and Protestants evangelize is that Protestants evangelize with the prosperity gospel, saying, you know, follow Jesus, give him your heart, be baptized, and then everything's going to work out well for you. And if it doesn't, like, you probably didn't give your heart completely, and it's kind of on you.
Yeah.
And the difference between that and Catholicism is, no, you need to do all those things, but you still might end up like Job, but there's meaning in suffering. And I think that Catholic film, or film that at least alludes to that, that's part of the reason why you can watch a tragedy and at the end say, wow, it was a great movie, because their suffering had meaning. Whereas all Christian movies have the exact same plot, and you can insert any character with any name, and it's, you know, successful girl moves to poor town. I think Trent did like a little thing on that, but it was like kind of like you can just check the boxes, and it's like you can predict the movie almost scene by scene, and in the end everyone's going to be happy because it's this Disney story, prosperity gospel, which is fine in some scenarios. It's great for fairy tales, it's great for kids, but when you actually get into telling real world stories, sometimes it ends with all of their friends died and they're still a good person, right? And like that is a real thing. Yeah. So I think that can be the difference as well, is that if everything's just this happy ending and this, you know, promise of everlasting joy, it's like that's actually not realistic, and people don't identify with that. Yeah. But if you tell the story of their life was terrible, but their friends came together, and, you know, either in the end it was better, or at least they saw meaning in this suffering, that's way more moving to people. And those are the movies that are going to actually go down in time and not, you know, be washed away in a year.
Well, I think those are also movies that everyone's going to watch, not just the very small demographic. Like, people will watch John Ford movies, for example, like what we're doing now, like atheists, Catholics, Protestants, like everyone's going to find something in there. Whereas these, Christian movies, they're made for a very specific audience. They don't have that universal appeal that I think good Catholic art has universal appeal.
So this series is most of the John Ford, I guess the movies that you're going to be focusing on are most of them Westerns, at least in this miniseries?
3 out of the 5 are Westerns.
Okay.
And it's kind of funny because in his own lifetime, he made about half and half Westerns and non-Westerns. He won 6 Academy Awards. None of them were for the Westerns. But his Westerns are the movies that have endured, his collaborations with John Wayne. So the 5 movies we picked were How Green Was My Valley, The Quiet Man. Those are both not Westerns. In fact, they're not set in the United States. One's in Wales, one's in Ireland. Then we have 3 Godfathers, The Searchers, and The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, which are all...
Great movie.
Yes. Those are all Westerns. And there's something about the American West which is uniquely, I think, beautiful. There's sort of a starkness and emptiness to it that sort of makes you think... I was listening to Pints with Aquinas over here, and he was talking with Father Mark Goring. And Father Mark was talking about the importance of going out into the desert, especially for young men, spending time in the wilderness. And that's something that Westerns can kind of vicariously help you do. You see the allure of that. It can inspire you to try to go do that yourself. And it's gorgeous cinematography. I'm glad the Westerns are getting more of a following, and that they're being remembered really well.
Well, and I think something with the Westerns too, I was listening to the Daily Wire. Sometimes they do their backstages, and I was going and listening to one of their old ones, and they did one right around the time of the Oscars, and they were talking about how nowadays you can basically predict, and this was 2019, I think, you can predict which movies are going to win the most awards, and it's whichever one has the most black people and the most trans people. And they're like, that's ridiculous. That's not art. Now, if you have a movie and it's a great movie and they happen to have those characters, that's fine. But if you can just scroll through the list and say, this has the most diversity, therefore that's the best movie, then the Oscars are completely meaningless. No one cares. And if you walk away from the Oscars awards saying, no, that clearly wasn't the best movie, well, I mean, not that it needs to be a generalized consensus, but some of these movies they were listing, it was like just diversity, just, kind of like anti-Semitic movie, like horrible movies, and then like 3 great movies and none of them win awards. And you're like, this was a great movie. Why was this not at least considered? And I think Ben Shapiro had this little spiel about the death of the American Western. And I think he referenced, John Wayne and some other kind of famous actors. But the death of that culture and the death of the popularity of those movies is actually indicative of the death of kind of Western man. Because in cowboy genre, it's you saddle up, you go out, you take take risks, you're on this big adventure, you're protecting the women and children in the local village, you shoot the bad guy, you like kind of bring justice to this lawless town, and then eventually most of the movies you see the cowboy kind of settling down, and he puts his hat down and goes inside and is like actually going to establish a home. And he was like, now if you see a Western movie, it's either the cowboy is just this violent, vicious, he kills the bad guy, but he also doesn't have any morals, or he's just kind of a sop, like doesn't care, can't fight, and is just an embarrassment. And so he was like, really, we need to inspire men, and a way to do that is actually to make good Westerns. Like, give them, like, I don't think boys these days grow up watching Western movies. They grow up watching superhero movies, which has their own, has its own merits to that. But I think classically, boys would watch Western movies and like would want to be a cowboy and like have a big farm and have a horse and fight the bad guys or fight Indians or whatever. And now that's like racial stereotyping, and it's just all this garbage. So anyway, that's interesting. Do you guys plan on trying to kind of expand the scope of like what Westerns mean for a culture and why it's important to have Westerns?
That'd be a great YouTube video. We'll have to do that sometime. It's one of those things. Our YouTube channel's kind of in a holding pattern right now until we have more time to work on it. But we're hoping over the summer, or at least I'm hoping over the summer, to be able to take a bit more time to put into that. I will write that on my list. Maybe Westerns and American.
I'll write an article.
There we go.
So for people that want to write articles, I know that there's like an easy way to reach out. are there specific things that you guys are open to, like opinions on, or open for people to write articles on, but you're not really going to promote? Like, you're not going to say, hey, we're looking for someone to write an article on this movie. Like, but are there kind of areas that you want to expand to that if people reached out, you would kind of latch on? Like, if someone said, hey, I want to do a series on silent movies, or I want to do a series on whatever, like, great. Yeah. Like, give us your plan. Are you guys pretty open with those type of new ideas?
Yeah. We had someone reach out recently, someone who had been liking and commenting on our post, and she wrote about this movie called, I think it was called Black Robe or something like that, which I had not heard about. Okay. And I guess I don't remember much about it, but I guess it was this movie about a monk, and she found it fascinating, but like it also had some like scandalous stuff in it. And she was just writing this long comment about it, and I was like, I've never heard of this, but you seem to have an interesting take on it, and if you'd be interested in writing on it, feel free. Now, obviously, if she writes on it, and then I look at it, and I'm like, okay, this does not fit this might lean towards promoting something we don't want to promote, then we have that conversation, maybe have her take another stab at it.
Sure.
Whether or not she actually writes it is a real question, but sometimes I'll see something like that in a comment, and if someone seems very passionate or like almost like, can you guys write on this, but like has written a lot about it, I'm like, oh, well, do you want to maybe give it a go or something? So sometimes it is just kind of like trying different things and seeing what works, but yeah, you just, again, like with someone writing on The Quiet Man, out of nowhere, you really never know where inspiration's going to come from.
Yeah.
And we've gotten a lot more engagement now. Like, I think when we were first starting, not a lot of people knew who we were, and so we were kind of reaching out. But I feel like now with, our recently completed big list that everyone's been commenting on, we have a lot more eyes on it. And I would expect more people are going to be engaged and interested in writing. So very interesting to see.
This is just something I'm curious about, kind of on the YouTube's fronts. Something that I've seen, I think Frad did a video or like a little episode on this, and he was talking about how when a lot of people get onto YouTube, the way that they make it big is by kind of contextualizing everything negatively, even though the actual video is not negative. Yeah. And so, and this is something you guys could easily do. I'm not saying I would recommend it, and I probably wouldn't recommend it, but you could easily go on there, and instead of saying 100 movies that Catholics should watch, or a great new release, you could say worst 10 movies of 2025, and that would get probably 10 times the views.
Yeah, it does.
But is that something that you would want to do? And maybe it's a good thing to say these are movies, kind of like to condemn things, like you shouldn't watch Wicked, or you shouldn't watch this, or whatever movies you decide to pick, because that would get more views, and it also would get people like angry, because maybe there's someone that likes a movie and they're gonna write an article. But I'm just curious, is that the kind of culture that you want? Or is that something, because I think that could be successful in either growing the channel, or at least kind of like, I don't know, kind of getting out there and like poking a little bit, like, no, you shouldn't watch this movie, and then see what the feedback is, rather than this is a good movie, and I wouldn't say not taking a stance, but just kind of like not being controversial. And do you think that maybe your space is to be more controversial, or to just keep it matter of fact and simple?
We got a post coming up that I think you'll like.
Yes, I love controversy.
It is more on the satirical side. That's all I'll say.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it's just funny. It's making me think of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Me personally, my sort of personal journey with YouTube and with social media and stuff, I used to consume a lot of more negative content, more negative cultural commentary, and it led me to kind of a bad place. And I don't want to be a part of leading someone to that place. At the same time, I don't want to be all nice and non-confrontational all the time. In fact, a couple of the posts that we have reviewed something negatively on the Substack, even when it's not a new release. I put a post out on Martin Scorsese's movie Silence, for example, where I negatively contrasted that with The Mission, because I think that the whole worldview behind Silence is not a very Catholic way of thinking about things. It's a more universalist, everything's very personal, rather than public and community driven. And so I contrasted that one negatively with the mission, and I would be very willing to do more of that. And even on the YouTube, going into some movies, and maybe we put like a not on the list tag to it or something. But I would still want to be making like 2 or 3 positive videos for every negative one that we put out there. Because I do want to maybe draw people in, say, ooh, I agree with them. I also hated that movie. And then be like, all right, well, here's some better stuff you can watch.
What's interesting, that what made me think of that was that this is probably a month ago or maybe even longer, but Ben Shapiro had some viral stuff that was going around, but really one video, it was just him reviewing Wicked, but then there were clips that were all, this part is bad and this part is bad. And I have never seen the Broadway show. I didn't see the movie. I barely know the story, but my wife has. And so I was like, hey, let's watch this. Like, just tell me what you think. And the whole time she was like, yeah, he's totally right. This part is too long. Oh, yeah. Like, I didn't like this scene. Oh, yeah. And she was like, but the way that it's marketed is that you shouldn't go watch this movie. And at the end of it, he was like, yeah, B+, you should go watch it.
Yeah.
But he was like, but this part is too long and this part doesn't make sense. And so I was like, now on the actual video, it's not a negative cover page, but in a lot of the short kind of like YouTube shorts, the thing that comes up, the photo that comes up is very negative. It's like him doing a thumbs down or whatever. And I'm like, I don't know how I feel about that, because he is being critical. It's not like, and what I think is the most ingenuous is when you have a clip that looks really negative, then you click on it and it has nothing to do with and you're like, okay, this is clearly just to get me in. So I don't like that. I think that's completely disingenuous. But things like that, like you guys could easily do 100 Catholic movies reviews X, and then you could be really critical of it, and at the end of it, give it like a grade. Which could be really cool, because I think a lot of people would enjoy that. You just have to be careful about not being, every movie you put up is just, don't watch this. This is full of sin. So,
and the other problem is with reviewing something that's like legitimately blasphemous or something. I'm thinking of like The Last Temptation of Christ or something. Even negative reviews, there's a reason why movie studios don't generally try to copyright negative reviews, because even negative reviews, all press is good press. You throw something out there, and some people might be curious. They might decide to go watch it for themselves anyway, and just see if they agree with you or not, or how fair you were being. You got to be careful. The more, and especially with our growth recently, the more I'm kind of realizing there's a responsibility that goes along with this. This isn't just me talking to my 20 Facebook friends. Like, we've got a significant, and there are people, Lord help me, who are reading my reviews and making decisions on whether their kids should watch something because of what I'm recommending. Oh my goodness, that I always thought, I've got to be careful that I don't get too proud or something if this blows up, but the bigger it gets, the humbler I feel, if that makes sense. The more I feel like there's a responsibility and a weight here that I have to really shoulder.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we're quite as big as you guys, but I feel that a little bit sometimes, where I'll have people reach out to me and want to come on the show, and I'm like, oh, like that would actually be kind of cool. But then I have to take a step back and say, no, I'm only going to do this if I'm interested in it. I'm only going to do it if I think it's going to be a good conversation. And if it's someone that I think is not going to add to the show, or it's going to, at the end of it, I'm going to realize that really wasn't like a family-friendly episode, I don't want to do it, because it's just not worth it. It's not worth sacrificing for like one episode and then have it full of swearing and then kind of like lose followers. It's like, no, I want to keep it. There's a kind of a certain standards of a show that I want to keep. And if I'm not interested in it, then I'm kind of just wasting my time. So like let's keep it interesting and keep it with people that I actually want to talk to. And it's simpler that way, because then you actually have a clear mission and you don't feel like you're just scrambling for followers or money or something. So
we had a certain guest, I won't say who on the podcast, but who asked us at the beginning, like, what's the rating for this show? Are we looking at like PG, PG-13, R? Like, are we? Because he's like, with Catholic shows, you never know. There's some guys who are totally cool with just going and swearing and whatever. And
is that Tim?
I wasn't going to say that, but I guess it was.
It was Trent Horn. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. Well, that could be another interesting thing. Actually, we've talked about having Trent or just Catholic Answers guys in general on, and it's always fun. Like when you have a long format podcast, it's fun to hear about their background and what they do. But it also is fun to get into some really specific questions about like, what is it like? When does a movie go too far with scenes or with swearing?
Mm-hmm.
Is it different if it's a war movie? Is it different if it's if it has nudity? Is it different if it's Schindler's List versus a movie that just has a ton of scenes? Well, yes, but how so? And where's that line between art and actual immorality? And I don't know where a lot of those lines are. But I think it is like a good discussion to kind of continually have, because I think that's always the dividing line for Catholic families, especially with like kind of teen movies. Is like, can we just watch the scene? Do we have to forward the scene? Do we have to get VidAngel? Is this movie just banned because we don't want to have our kids talk about how they saw Braveheart and then everyone's scandalized? Like what does that actually look like? And it is different, I think, depending on the family, but there should be some sort of a baseline about like, no, this is too far. This is pornography, or this is blasphemous. And I actually don't know if I'm completely sure of what that is. I think it's sort of like the beard analogy, where if someone has a beard, they have a beard, and if it's stubble, it's stubble, but it's somewhere in between. You can't really tell if it's a beard or not. And I think that when you see a movie and there's a scene in it, you're like, okay, that was too far, and I should have either not watched this or I should have forwarded it. But it's difficult to just read a review or read the IMDb parents guide and say this is too far, because descriptions are different, and eventually it's like, well, I'm going to be cutting off 90% of movies if I just don't watch it if it has a potential suggestion. Like that's almost impossible. So then what is that standard? Which is kind of an interesting spot for you guys to be in, because you're sort of setting the standard and then also saying, please don't refer to us as the standard, right?
We're not giving things the Dove seal of approval or anything.
Right.
That line is so hard, and it even, there isn't an objective line, right? What might be fine for one person is not fine for another person. There are very few movies that I've seen where I would say, yes, that particular bit of nudity or that particular more suggestive scene was necessary, and this movie would have been lesser without it.
Right.
Schindler's List is a good example of that, where the sort of dehumanization that is portrayed with that is necessary to the plot. There's a movie, it's not a great movie, called Ex Machina, which is about this sort of Mark Zuckerberg tech bro guy who's trying to create artificial intelligence, and he's got these robots, and they're trying to approximate humans as much as possible. And at the very end, the one robot, when she's sort of assuming that mantle of humanity, she is naked, sort of in an Adam and Eve kind of way. And I thought, okay, that image is integral to this movie's story. If I were to show this movie to someone, I wouldn't want to take that image out, because it's necessary to. Now, again, I didn't particularly like the movie. I wouldn't show it to many people anyway. But most films, I think that you can get away with a VidAngel or with something like that, with a quick fast forward button. The problem is, especially if you use VidAngel or the ClearPlay DVD filters that my parents had, sometimes you don't realize that there's something in it. There's a movie, The King's Speech, which won an Oscar probably 15 years ago. Great movie. Love it. We watched it with my parents with the filtered version. And so we get to Christendom, and I'm like, oh, I want to show this to some people. We get in there, and one of the things, it's about they're doing this speech therapy, and one of the things that the guy says is, well, you don't stutter when you're swearing. And so they go off into this just tirade of like the most vile words possible. And I'm sitting there in the basement of the student center.
You're like
mixed
writing stuff
company.
down.
I'm like, oh my goodness. And I'm gonna have a different friend group after today. Yeah, exactly.
Right. And that's when 100 Catholic movies started.
That was number one. No. But like I said, that's a great movie. Just be aware of that going into it. So I think there is a bit of a danger when you consume everything that way, that you start to lose a sense of things, and then you recommend someone to something to someone else.
Totally. And I think everyone's probably done that. Like I've definitely watched, I think I actually recommended Braveheart to someone, and I gave them like hey, it's violent and there's some language and whatever, but whenever I watched it with my dad, like there were the scene or two that we forwarded, I didn't even remember it was in there. And I should have remembered that we always forwarded a scene, but I just didn't think of it. And then I got feedback being like, oh, there was a scene, by the way. And I was like, oh, well, I feel bad, but also I've never seen it.
Yeah,
I literally is not in my mind that it's present in the movie. But yeah, that can be a difficult thing for sure. But you always have to do the Stanford, don't watch
Good movie,
this.
don't watch it.
Good movie, don't watch it. Yeah, would not
Yeah.
recommend. So what are the plans for 100 Catholic movies going forward? You're doing the next 100 movies, so you've got a new list. You've got some mini series that you're going to be doing. You're still going to be doing new releases. Do you guys get early viewing slots sometimes? Is that something you're working on?
Sometimes, yes. Mostly, we have a Catholic PR firm. They do things for Angel Studios. They do things for some more smaller things. They'll send us screeners sometimes.
Okay.
Got one in the inbox right now, actually. So,
Nice.
Which will be fun.
Okay.
But like 20th Century Fox isn't sending us screeners.
Yeah, not yet.
Yeah, exactly, not yet. We're not big enough to be like a Rotten Tomatoes critic or anything like that, but we do enjoy that. And when we get those, we always feel it's good to review the films and review them honestly. There was one film that we were sent a screener that we just didn't review because it felt like punching down. And when it feels like we're punching down like that, that's a real rough kind of spot to be in. But our reviews will be honest, and it won't be a sort of, we're going to give this a positive review so we get more screeners kind of thing. It's not worth having an extra week before the movie comes out to see it. Like now, new releases are going to keep coming out. We very much enjoy that. We want at some point to figure out a monetization plan for this, to be able to pay our writers to go see new releases. That would be cool.
What's the easiest way to do that? Is that to just have a big YouTube channel, or is that to...
Substack has a subscription model, and we're, in fact, at brunch later today, we're probably going to talk about that. Now that we've hit sort of a critical mass where we could turn that on and make some money. But what we would want to provide for that, I'm usually very wary of subscription things because I think most of them don't provide enough of a service to justify the subscription.
Right.
It basically comes down to, I subscribe to Trent Horn or I subscribe to The Pillar because I like the free work that they're already doing and I want to support it rather than because they're actually offering, $12 extra a month of stuff behind the paywall.
Right.
And I hope there's people who would be willing to support us for that.
What do you think would be worth, let's say, $5 a month? Do you think that'd be access to the early screener reviews and things like that, where it's like, hey, if you're one of our members that support us, you would get access to these things early, and then a couple weeks later we would release that? Because I think that's what Frad does with his stuff. Like he'll have an interview with Peterson or someone, and it's like, okay, if you're paying the $10 a month, you get it today. Otherwise, it'll be out in 2 weeks. So you'll still get to see it if you're just a big fan. It's not cutting off. It's not saying this content is never available to my other fans, but it is saying, like, as a thank you for supporting me, even if it's minimal, you get this 2 weeks early, which sounds like with new releases, that could be a lucrative way to make money for y'all,
especially if we get screeners, something like that. Doing the podcast early, giving people some extra early time to see the podcast or see YouTube videos early, might be a thing. Something I've floated. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but doing an actual live stream with our subscribers, like having more interaction, direct with them, that would be cool.
Yeah,
we used to do a weekly watches series, which was difficult to wrangle every week. Cameron was in charge of that for a while, and
it was really fun. I would love to bring it back.
It was great.
Just finding like 4 people each week to write a paragraph on something they watched. I have some ideas to bring it back to get people stuff. Get me stuff ahead of time. But
now you're not local, but have you also thought about trying to tap into the local community and like rent out the theater once a month, and then say we have a monthly? Because I've thought about doing that with people that follow our show, or just in general, like a guys group, and say, hey, we're all busy, not everyone has time, but we're going to 12 times a year rent out the theater. We need to sell at least 250 tickets, and we're going to do the Passion before Easter, and we're going to have, and you kind of set up the year with a few movies that make sense. It's a Wonderful Life before Christmas, and then you have 5 or 6 other movies that you pick, and then you just pack the theater. And it's like, hey, Catholic night, basically. It's a great movie. We have to pick something that's wholesome, that should be seen on the big screen. And the theater is going to love it because they sold out their theater. And then we have this big event. And then afterwards, everyone hangs out at a bar, whatever, and talks about the movie. I think that could be kind of a cool community thing, too. I
was just at Front Row Cinemas a week ago talking with someone there about the logistics of doing something like that. So really, it's maybe I think we were talking about during the summer to do something like that, just because summer is when we all are able to give full focus.
Sure.
Yeah.
So because I would want to give it full focus so that I can market it well and actually get butts and seats, and get the maximum amount of people. So definitely in the future, yeah.
And this is definitely our biggest subscriber base is Northern Virginia.
Yeah,
right.
Especially before we sort of started taking off, Christendom folks were most of our readers, and I think that's we've kind of broken out of that now. But
and there's different ways you could do it. I think it's tough when you're in a spot like you guys are, where you're not like huge celebrities, but also a lot of people know about you and have opinions and want to talk to you about a movie and whatever. I can almost guarantee you, if you did just one, like you rent the theater out in July and show some big like Interstellar or something that's just like a big movie that people want to see on the big screen, and then and then afterwards exactly, have an intermission, but do some kind of big epic movie, have people come watch it, and then say afterwards join us at whatever coffee shop for drinks or cigar lounge, whatever you want to do, and then just hang out with people. And it wouldn't have to be that often, but just to actually show we're trying to build not only an online presence, but kind of a grassroots community of people that are interested in film, and like maybe other people will be inspired to rent out the theater or start their own group or reach out to us or write articles, just to kind of keep cultivating that.
Well, it's been amazing. And even in my my own sort of local town, I'm in a very small city in Ohio. The sort of Catholic group that I'm building, there's already people who are, like when I told them about the blog, they were super excited. The daughter of one of my friends there actually wants to become a Catholic filmmaker. It's like, well, that's kind of cool. I want to connect with her and talk to her. And so there's all sorts of different things, even in little pockets around the country, like Front Royal, a place like Steubenville. You get a little bit more concentrated for that. Even some cities like Cincinnati, for example, there's a lot of Catholics there, a lot of things you can do there. But finding those people is the hardest thing. But once you found them, making those in-person, real-world connections, that is super important, because I think more and more, especially our generation, we're going to start disconnecting more. We're going to get offline a little bit more, which is why I'm wary of like a subscription model for something, is because I think people are going to start paying for fewer and fewer subscriptions, at least the people that we want to reach. And they're going to look for more of that real world connection. And building those sort of communities would be really cool. Doing something here in Front Royal, maybe once a year going somewhere else in the country, somewhere like Texas, go to Dallas, Fort Worth, or to Houston and rent out a theater there and do it. That would be awesome.
Sure.
Would love to do that.
Yeah. Have you guys, have you reached out to directors and things? I know you've had a few of them on your show, or people have been involved in movie making, but are there some bigger directors or maybe just like Catholic directors that you're trying to get on the show? That
Mel Gibson.
Oh, really?
Mel, if you're listening,
hey, you could do it.
If you're listening, invite us to Rome. We want to come cover the shooting in August for Resurrection.
You never know.
You never know.
Reach out to the SSPX. They probably
there we go. They've got the connection.
No, he's instead of a contest.
Yeah, he's even further broken off from that. Yeah.
My uncle was actually there at I don't know if it was the NAC at the time, but studying in Rome. He's part of the fraternity, and
nice.
Mel Gibson rented out their chapel for the time he was there, and they were like, it was really weird because all of us are like, Mel Gibson, this is huge, but then at the time The Passion was just being filmed, so they had no idea what it was going to be, and so they were all very wary of like being involved if it was like not a good movie.
Weird, yeah.
And so he invited them to like, hey, why don't you come watch the shootings and tell me what you think, and like watch the crucifixion scene, and they were all like, no, I think that would look bad, and like maybe you aren't going to do it well. And now he's like, I wish I went. Like now, that was a huge wasted opportunity. But
yeah, you gotta be wary that that's not like a PR thing that he's doing. Like, ooh,
right? The seminarians
Catholic
approve.
seminarians. Yeah, exactly.
Have you guys reached out to? I know there's a new movie coming out soon on Sister Wilhelmina, I think, or it's in the process of. Actually, I don't know if it's a movie. It might be more of like a docudrama. But there's a guy. I can give you his contact info. He's supposed to come on the show in a couple months, but he might be a neat guy to reach out to because I think he's a lawyer and then part-time filmmaker.
Awesome.
But it sounds like they've interviewed Cardinal Burke and some other kind of bigger names, and they're doing a movie about Sister Wilhelmina, who's I think she's in Corrupt right now.
Yeah.
Anyway, like people like that who aren't maybe widely known, but their movie hopefully will have wide viewership, and are also doing like Catholic movies or at least movies about saints.
And I have great respect for people
who
go and do that, who set out and we're like, we're going to make a movie.
Yeah.
One of these days, I hope to be one of those people.
Yeah.
But, you know, the people who are like, we're going to do it. We're going to find the funding. We're going to film this, and we're going to get it distributed. Have great respect for those people, especially in the Catholic world. I've seen some great Catholic documentaries. My local mall Cineplex in West Virginia for some reason plays a lot of Catholic documentaries, and so I go down and I see those all the time. There was one time somebody came up to me afterwards. He was like, I knew every single person in the theater except you. And so we ended up having dinner with their family, and it was a whole great thing. But
only in a small town.
Exactly. But I would love to talk to him, whoever that is, and just make the connection. There's a couple other people, again, like don't want to use names, but we've had some people reach out and ask about collaborations on things. It's one of those things where when you start getting those sorts of offers, it gets surreal. People that you've followed online that you respect. I remember going all the way back to the start of the blog. One of our first 100 subscribers is a Catholic writer who I greatly respect, who was a major speaker at Christendom when I was there. Sort of thing. I don't. Again,
I have a couple names in mind.
Don't want to out this person. We can do it after the pod, but it's like, no. I wish. I know people who know his wife's family. Anyway,
get him on.
Yeah, but it's just kind of cool to know that these people are people, and the Catholic world is really small, and these people are often very humble, very willing to talk, and they're out there just doing the Lord's work.
Right. Now, you guys mentioned originally you were planning on doing a book, and that turned into a blog. Are there still plans to do a book at some point and like kind of publish the list, or?
Yeah. So I think one of the big value adds would be that if we did do a book, then we would paywall the list, or at least most of the list. So that would be a huge value add for subscribing. But yeah, talks have sort of resurfaced on that. I have a friend works at a big Catholic. Her dad helps run a big Catholic publishing company. I won't say which, in case the talks don't go through. Whatever. She's great. She's amazing. She actually helped me, and I think I actually mentioned this on the first time I was on. She actually helped me publish my first film review on West Side Story. So yeah, she just basically gave us like the guidelines for submissions and everything. So we're definitely not rushing that. That's something I want to give full attention and make the best presentation possible. So yeah, that is something that is definitely on the docket for this year. Just getting that going. That'd be
cool.
Really great.
I'd also another thing you could do. I don't know. Do you are you friends with Michael Foley at Baylor?
Yes,
Dr. Foley. Another cool partnership that has crossed my mind a few times is that I know he's always looking to like make more books about drinks, and he's got his like cooking with the saints and drinking with the saints.
Every Catholic should drink.
Yeah, getting slammed with the saints. But actually, a really neat idea could be asking him to partner either on a book or some type of like article series, but drinks that pair with your 100 movies, which
TCM Wine Club.
Yeah, I don't know what that would be exactly, but you could probably come up with some like really original cocktails. Come up with some unique names. You could even like pitch him some ideas.
The Andre Rublev.
Yeah, but just to have, I don't know, I guess you don't really have any Bond. I don't know if you have Bond movies on the list. You could do
Not
the
on the
Vesper
list.
Martini, but
Skyfall is the one I would write on.
Skyfall. Okay,
Yeah.
but like things like that, so that you're expanding. It's not just for like movie lovers. It's also like, here are drinks you could pair with it if you want to do a movie night at home, and you can kind of theme the evening a little bit. Or you know, I don't know if you guys care about that at all, but I bet there are people who care about that enough to either buy a book or to say, yeah, I'll tackle that. I need to make 100 cocktail recipes or something to that effect. It could be kind of a neat way to branch out, building on the list that you already have, but then making it lucrative for different audiences, and not just, this is 100 movies you should watch and that's kind of it. You know, which obviously that's a reductionist way to look at it, but being able to say, no, we actually worked hard on the list. We have articles defending it, and then we also have different ways your family can utilize this, or maybe like a recommended days to watch these movies because of where they fall in the year or things like that. So
that's a great idea. I've thought about that before, collaborating with Dr.
just let me know what the royalties are on.
I'll send you that.
Yeah, he's great.
Yeah.
No, you should have him on. I feel like he might have some really good. He's one of those people that he's not known for like his opinions on film, but I bet he has some really cool opinions about film.
He's got him.
Yeah,
I've had
him
discussions with him about film and movies, and he's a really fun person to talk to.
Yeah, we had him on, but it was like 45 minutes, and he had to go pick up his son from soccer practice, and it was a little discombobulated. But we tried to get him back on. He actually recently, for anyone who's interested, just did a series with, I guess it's in partnership with Benedictine College, but it's like a 5-part series on like leisure and drinking, and it's kind of just like a bunch of like Chesterton Lewis quotes and then a bunch of Foleyisms. But it's really well done, and he goes to like a winery and talks about like times you should drink and toasting, and really, really well done. I think the whole thing is like an hour, but yeah, it's a neat little mini series.
I know he's sort of in the orbit of like Cameron O'Hearn and the Mass of the Ages folks and all that. So
you guys, you should have them on too. It'd be neat to talk to like what is Catholic filmmaking specifically when all of the things you're filming are like mass oriented and not just Catholic. I mean, I guess their documentaries have a little bit of Catholic stories, but not. It's primarily about like the traditional mass.
How do you bring a camera crew in and film at mass? How do you do that reverently? That would be a really interesting sort of conversation to have.
Yeah, I have both of their numbers if you want. I can give it to you.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, they're really, I mean, they're super busy, but I think they're anything that gets their movie out, and especially if you have a Catholic movie group saying, we want to know how you make Catholic movies, and they're also doing a lot. I think they have classes for priests on how to learn the Latin Mass, and I know they're working on another big film. And
I thought I saw that they were either pitching or trying to get crowdfunding for a narrative film as well. Which
that might be right. I don't know if I saw that or not.
Would be
but
really cool.
Yeah, cool. Well, thanks for spending time today. We're getting close to an hour and a half, so we should probably wrap it up. Unless you guys want to keep talking, and I'm more than happy to keep going. What do you guys want to do? You have to run?
No, I don't have to run.
I don't have to run.
All right. We keep going.
Yeah.
All right, Sam, tell me what's going on in your life.
In my life.
Yeah, let's get away from Catholic movies.
Personal.
Let's get really personal. Just kidding.
I was like, oh my gosh.
No, just I guess let's more so your vision for 100 Catholic movies and maybe things that are upcoming. Like you got some articles coming up, you got some new movies, we have the new summer releases.
My big thing is I want to do a spinoff called 100 Movies Every Family Should See.
Okay.
And either that's going to happen in the summer.
And these are just like all Pixar films.
That's the thing. I was
first
making a tentative list, and I was like, I'm going to intentionally not put as many because that's going to be my instinct.
You know what? I'd actually, not to derail you, I would really love, and maybe if no one will write it, I'll write it, but an article on either a critique of or a defense for VeggieTales, because it's not Catholic. But it does teach a lot of really Catholic stories, and it's extremely wholesome, but it's not Catholic. So it'd be kind of a neat thing to be like, is this actually something kids should watch?
Oh, yeah.
Because it's a little bit Protestant-y, the word alone and QWERTY and all that. But at the same time, it does teach Bible stories in a tangible way, as long as you understand that people in Nineveh weren't actually getting slapped by fish. Like you have to, there's a little bit of context you need.
There's a big bunny, big chocolate bunny.
Yeah.
I always remember that one.
Yeah. Anyway, not to derail you.
Oh, no, I love it. I'll talk about VeggieTales all the day long. We actually have a connection to Phil Vischer that we haven't cashed in on yet.
Who's Phil Vischer?
Yeah, the co-creator of VeggieTales.
Bob the Tomato.
Bob
No
the Tomato.
kidding. That's cool.
Through Tony Bancroft, the Disney animator.
Yep.
Who we had on, who worked on VeggieTales for a little bit, actually. Right, actually, his brother.
His brother worked on it.
Yeah, the second
We
time,
always mix that
time
up.
I made that mistake. Yeah, Tom worked on it. But still, they're all within the same circle. So yeah, that. But VeggieTales. I would write something on that. I just found out that they're working on a Larry Boy movie. So.
Is it bad that I think it's going to be bad?
That's the thing. VeggieTales since about like 2010 or 2012 has all been awful. So it's kind of one of those things where can we should we support this? Should we be But they got bought out by DreamWorks, I think, and it just really was not great. But as a late millennial, early Zoomer Catholic kid, VeggieTales was a huge part of my childhood.
VeggieTales and the CCC Saint movies.
Yes, the CCC. If I could find someone who worked on those CCC Saint movies, I would do like a 5-part docu-series on that. Like, I want to know everything.
We're doing
about
a
that.
deep dive.
Yes.
Those are
that would
so
be great.
foundational in my
I'm trying
childhood.
to think of, there was a book that was, so we had McInerney, well, we had him on twice, and he actually would be a really good guest to have on to talk about art and film.
He's so busy.
He is.
Let me think.
He told us,
VeggieTales.
I'm cutting back on my podcast appearances. And then like the next week he was on with Dr. Horn, the president up at the college. So like,
Sounds like he just
I
has
see,
priorities.
I see. Yeah.
I don't blame him.
I met him at the premiere of his John Paul II play, and he's a really great person. Really enjoyed talking to him there.
We watched Wildcat with him at the Alamo.
We happened to be at the same show, and
Film I didn't see because my as much as I can get like Jesus Thirsts and the Michel Dupont story at my West Virginia Miniplex, they did not play Wildcat, unfortunately.
we barely got it. It was like playing for one day.
and
courtesy of the Alamo Film Club.
Yeah, and they're usually
That was
like
it.
there's usually like
Showing.
10 people here, and there's like 70 people here. Where do all these people come from? And we're like, well, we know half of them. They're all the Catholics showed up.
They're all here. Yeah.
Yeah.
So when McInerney was on, he mentioned a book, and it's a I just pulled it up because I couldn't remember the title, but it's either by or I guess it's a memoir of Phil Vischer, and it's called Me, Myself, and Bob.
Yeah.
True story about dreams, God, and talking vegetables. And it's on my Amazon wish list, but he was like, that book is a really good book. And then he told us we should have him on, and I was like, how? Do you have his number? Like, can we contact him? But he would be a neat guy to have on for sure.
Yeah. We can get that book now.
Yeah.
Who's another guy? There's so many people that you could have on, or that probably locally have connections to like big producers or actors or something.
We want to talk to Tom Wilson eventually. We have that connection through Paul Rugg. So that, and he actually referred us to this documentary that Tom put out, which talks a lot about his own, journey with being a celebrity and everything. So yeah, I mean, that might be something that if we ever did that, we'd just bring Paul again, and he'd help kind of guide the conversation. For
David Henry's another one.
Yeah.
He just David Henry just directed a movie last, was it October?
Yeah, we were supposed. Yeah, we had someone promise to connect us, so I just need to reach out again.
That's the trouble when you start getting into all the different guests and connections, is all the follow-up.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to, Brian, who's one of my co-hosts, I'm trying to loop him into being more of a producer, because up until now, most of the people I've been reaching out to, I know personally, and so I just text them.
Yeah.
But there are people that I'm like, no, we can get this person on, and I don't think that they're going to charge. We just have to email them every week. For like 6 months, and then they'll come on. And so it's like, we kind of just
want
need
to reconnect. And
we need a list of people that's like, hey, we have mutual friends. We saw you on this. Thanks for coming on this. Like, really liked your video. We'd like to reach out. Here's our, you just have to keep doing that, because they have so many requests that eventually the way that they sort through them is, oh, this person's been persistent. Okay, we'll do it.
Yeah.
Not always. And sometimes it's a money thing, but I think a lot of these guys, especially if you're talking to like retired producers, retired actors, they don't have a lot going on, and they do want to talk about it. And I think they might actually enjoy talking about it in kind of a long form thing where they can just say what they want and not a 10-minute quick question, quick interview thing
The
because
Joe
it just
Rogan
feels,
experience.
it just feels fake. I mean, it really does. Sorry, I got you off track. You were talking about you wanted to do 100 Catholic movies that every family should watch.
Yeah, so
and to be all
specifically,
family
it
show.
would not be called 100 Catholic. It would just be called 100 movies every family should see. So if like someone with a family found this, who's just looking for quality entertainment, just found our Substack, they would immediately be drawn to it. I think it would have a much bigger appeal. Because we already, like I think Joe alluded to, we get people who say like, oh, we come to this list to find movies for our family. So that would also give us, then we have a divide of, okay, we want to do this new release on a Disney movie. Okay, that's going to go in the family Substack, where more adult stuff, more mature fare, especially as we're getting into stuff that is maybe a little edgier, maybe less like what you would think would go on the list. So we could put that stuff on our new list and that site, and then have the family Substack for anything PG rated or whatever. Even maybe throw some Marvel stuff in there.
And it would still be very much from like a Catholic or a Christian perspective, just because that's the worldview of our writers, right?
Yes.
But the marketing of it would be a bit more like, this is something if you're subscribed to the Daily Wire or something, and you're looking for, if the word Catholic might put you off, well, here's something that's a bit more.
Well, Trojan horse too.
Yeah, exactly. We'll get to that way.
Because there's such an untapped potential for kids movies. Like we put some of the best on our list. Like Prince of Egypt, for example. Like some of those like must-haves, Incredibles. But there's hundreds of other movies that we want to explore. And this next list is not going to be like as we've been talking about. It's just more adult-oriented. So.
I just
kind of
rewatched
separated that.
I actually think that could be down the road, depending on how you want to organize this. That could be a really helpful way to organize everything, because rather than saying here's a comprehensive list that's kind of got a lot of complexity, and you've got your 4-hour Russian movies and you've got the Incredibles and there's a wide range of movies. That's great for kind of just opening people up to cinema. But then I think areas you could easily explore would also be like. It wouldn't even have to be 100, but if you want to stick with that number, fine. But like 100, like historical war movies you should see, and you go through like the Band of Brothers, and you go through We Were Soldiers, and maybe even kind of non-historical ones like The Patriot that are just kind of like war-based action movies. Yeah. Because then you find the guy who that's his thing. Then you have 90% of the movies he likes in there, but then you give him 10 more movies that he's never seen, and you open him up to that. But then you start saying, oh, here's like, if you're into this, here's 100 movies you recommend on kind of wartime themes or on horror. Like if you could, I don't know if you could find a good, I
don't know if we could get to 100 or not, but
but if you could,
we're gonna try to do 5.
But if you could, then it's like that way you start building that genre a little bit. Because I was actually talking to Mark, who's the editor of the show, and I was saying, I think a difficult thing when you're talking to someone about movies, like whether this is a good movie or a bad movie, is there's a disagreement about genre. So you can say this saint movie is a good movie, and then this horror movie is a good movie. And it's like, well, they are good movies, but they're good movies in different ways. This is a good movie because it's a depiction of a good person, and it's good to think about things like that. But I wouldn't say that most of the saint movies I've watched are like enjoyable.
Right.
They have some deep themes. They tell a good story, some of them, but a lot of times it's more like, this is just good for me to watch. It's a good book to read, but it's not like super enjoyable. But then there's some movies that are like a little bit out there, but it's like, that was actually a really fun movie. Yeah. So you have to kind of contextualize it by what genre is this movie actually in, and then in the thriller section, here are all the movies that I really like, and here in the saint section, here are the movies I really like. Because otherwise, saying this movie's a good movie and this movie's a good movie, it's like, it's almost meaningless, because it's really just subjective. Like,
and that's why we couldn't rank our list.
Yeah.
Like,
wait, it's not ranked? No. Is that like the most common like question you guys get, is like pushback on the numbers?
It's either that or like people just like, it became a free for all toward the end. It's just like Wild West, like shootout. Everyone's like, this movie, like this movie called like Mom's Night Out. I was like, okay.
That's a top 100 movie. Yeah. Really, just because of Sean Astin, right?
Yeah. Sean Astin's great in it.
Like, doesn't his like arm pop out and pops it back in?
Yeah.
To go back to your point, Anthony, about genre, that's one of the things we're doing with this list, is having these different series, because it's really helpful also just in studying film in general, when you can see one film and then look at a couple other examples in that same genre and like, oh, it's really interesting. Like I want to do something on silent films because I think there's a lot of interesting stuff out there. But
yeah, there's easily 100 there.
Yeah, and when you're just you're going through this list and you're like Spider-Man, Man for All Seasons, silent film, Passion of Joan of Arc, Faust, like. It's just like you kind of feel over the place. So if you kind of put them in one section, then you can kind of look at them kind of as a group. It's helpful for study and appreciation.
Yeah.
Another thing you could do, this would be more for your podcast series, but if you had Walter come on and talk about the movies that he's currently doing, because then you could, if he has his 4, John Ford movies or whatever his series is, you could just have him on at the end of it and then be like, let's talk for 30 minutes about each movie and why you picked them. And
every time we get like a Walter comment, it's like yes, like we got something that he likes.
he finds me. He'll like corner me sometimes. Be like, so I saw you put this movie, and
I disagree. Well, what you should do is 100 movies Walter would watch.
And
give him his own list.
Yeah.
Because he would publish every week if you asked him to.
He absolutely would.
He absolutely has like 100 movies that like are extremely excellent that I've never heard of.
Yep.
That like could easily fill a list.
Actually, that's a great title. Walter's 100 movies that you've never heard of. Like the most obscure, crazy movies that are like top notch.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah, no, Walter would be a good resource. I've thought about having him on. I just haven't scheduled it, but that would
Introduce
be
the world to Walter.
Yes.
Yeah, it'd be like, hey, if you follow him on Facebook, you'll get 10 songs every week that you've never heard of, and like a huge history of each band member and all this random knowledge that's really cool.
Yes.
Also, Dr. Flippin would probably be another good one. I know he has like an extensive library of movies and rankings, and I think he has a rental system. Like he has like a library, you can go to his house and like rent a movie. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
I don't know this.
I don't know if that's official, but I'm pretty sure.
I heard rumors of
The
such a
rumors.
thing when I was
Next
there.
to the
It
garlic
seemed
shelf.
Exactly.
The garlic.
Get a movie,
farm.
get a free garlic bulb. Yeah. That's actually your card. Is you have to bring a bulb of garlic.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like a little like bartering going on.
And you have to let him know about at least one new engaged couple.
Right. I heard the other week, maybe this is an old story, but someone was telling me that either he or Walter, but I'm pretty sure it was him, went up to a couple that was dating and was like, I just want to let you know you guys are actually third cousins. Like I figured it out, and they didn't know.
That's
I don't
the urban legend.
I feel like that might be like a 20-year-old story. I don't know, but I really want to know who it was and if they worked out. Like, did they get a dispensation or did they just break it off right there? Like, okay, forget it.
I have to imagine it's true because he is so gung-ho about that list, and I can see he's just so motivated, and I imagine
Does
that's
he have
why.
like a big family tree in his house somewhere? Like a big,
He has
like
a spreadsheet.
a spreadsheet?
He's got a little
Oh my
notebook,
gosh.
and then he's got a spreadsheet,
Yeah. Wouldn't shock me.
and he's got his spies.
Yeah,
That's one of the things I'm concerned about with Criste. I'm staying at 500 students. It's like eventually everyone who's there is going to be an alumni kid, and they're all going to be related to each other in some way. And
Yeah, right. Yeah, your options go down and
Exactly,
down and down. Yeah,
exactly.
eventually there'll be no appeal to go to Christendom.
yeah.
The MRS degree just won't exist.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, you're coming for religious life?
Yeah.
Because all of the men here are related to you.
Yes.
Yeah, that's great. So yeah, what what are some other ideas you have for moving forward in the next, I don't know, 5 years? You've got the book. You want to do spin-off kind of series or mini series on things. You're going to do the early screeners. You're going to get more people to start writing articles and maybe go to those screeners and write articles. Is it eventually working towards a movie? Is that the
Yes.
goal?
Yeah.
Yes.
And what
We
would
don't
that,
know when.
What would that movie be about? Like, what's the kind of general thought for the
Andre
movie?
Rublev too.
Yes. Part 2, Sent to Shenandoah Valley.
Yeah.
Also Black and
John
White.
Wick 7.
John Wick 7. One of our goals for this year was to, I mean, still is to produce one live action and one animated short. It was kind of just like an ambitious goal or whatnot. We have one live action short film in the pipeline that we worked on last year.
Okay. Yeah.
That finally I think is getting. John Pogeczki's working on it.
Mea culpa.
No, yeah, we have our lives have been crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was just texting him and just seeing what the process was there. But yeah, that is a challenge for us, and it's very much still in the front of my mind. I'm actually starting a filmmaking club at Christendom.
Cool.
Because the talent that I've seen since working there is incredible, because I've started the short film competition for Dorm Wars, and we had one last year that was Star Wars themed, and that was really great. And then we had one this year that was the challenge was recreate a film scene. So we had one of Inception, Jurassic Park, done to fidelity and like really creative and really well done. Like they had a bunch of green screen and CGI effects.
Wow.
I was just like,
the big Crusader like floating over the chapel.
I'll have to send it to you. It's amazing.
Yeah,
send it. Got Tom McFadden in it.
Oh.
As Hammond from Jurassic Park. How do I go here? I'll show you.
I had Tom McFadden in a Dorm Wars movie myself.
Yeah. So the talent is incredible. So I really want to funnel that. And if one of the short films, and we ended up maybe a short film comes out of that and we end up producing and getting some fundraising for it, that'd be amazing. And then also we've just had so many amazing animation contacts through podcasting that I just feel like that is something that we could, if we could figure out the system in the pipeline to do that, and get people who are passionate about animating, that's something that we just have a concept, we throw it at them. We don't have to get a big crew or anything, go on site or something somewhere like that. We can just have that going
and just do
even
voice
if it's
acting,
just animated shorts or whatnot. And also, I'm just very passionate about animation in general. Just to have some hand in that would be amazing. So whether or not that happens this year, we'll see. But it is definitely still once we can consistently do that and show ourselves there, get some stuff to festivals, then we can prove then eventually we can work our way to a movie.
Yeah.
But the more we grow our fan base, that's more and more fundraising potential down the line for when we want to do something. So yeah, even if that's something 10 years down the road, 5 years, whatnot, that is, I think the three of us can all agree that is absolutely a goal.
And I'm overflowing with ideas. Once I finish my dissertation, the next thing I want to do is try to write a feature script, and I'll probably adapt something first, just so that I'm not coming up with a super original thing, so that I've got a blueprint to follow. But that's my next big writing project that I want to do. I've got all sorts of ideas that would make great Catholic movies in the vein of our list, things that aren't preachy my first drafts, whenever I write something, it's always way too preachy, and then it's the 2nd through 10th drafts that's
a little more subtle. Not like that motorcycle.
Exactly. That's one of our subscribers.
Yeah.
Shove it. Yeah.
Trying to figure out how to get in the building.
Exactly.
Yeah, what do you think what's the future of Catholic filmmaking? Because it seems like Hollywood, maybe they make a reversal, but it seems like Hollywood is kind of dead. There was a clip going around, I think it was Rob Lowe, who was on maybe Howard Stern or some podcast, and he was talking about how he was like, Hollywood, we don't even film stuff in Hollywood anymore. He said it's cheaper to get a whole film crew, everyone you need to go to London or to go to somewhere in Europe than it is to literally rent a tiny little film studio plot.
Yeah.
Or lot. And so if you think about that, the idea of people, I know people still go to Hollywood and try to make it big, but the idea of going to Hollywood and becoming this huge actor or filmmaker, it seems like it's waning. And now you have crowdfunding. Now you have our iPhones are so good that you can do fairly decent movies just with an iPhone. Sound equipment is pretty cheap, so it's not even that hard to make even if it's a terrible movie, the quality of at least the recording and audio is really good for the budget. And then if you get into animation, to your point, voice actors, there's so many people that want to do voice acting. I could probably think of 5 or 6 people that want to do it and would be good at it. Yeah. If you said, hey, it's low budget, it's a 30-minute film about, it's just a bunch of animated animals talking, and we want you to do this part and come to this place to record. That is really minimal money. And animating, I don't know how expensive it is, but it's way cheaper than buying all the cameras and going to sites and shooting. Yeah. So it seems like money-wise, there's a huge gap. Yeah. And also because there's not a ton of new children's entertainment, because all the Cartoon Networks are terrible. Yeah. If you actually got into that space and just made good kids content at first, that seems like that would be a huge opportunity to take advantage of.
What was when we talked to Tim Record on the podcast? I was going to mention Tim. He's trying to get a sort of Catholic animation studio off the ground. Okay. What was it called? It was
Sycamore Studios.
Sycamore Studios, yes. Okay.
They're working on a Dr. Dolittle film and what was the other one?
It was the adaptation of Ben Hatke's book.
Yeah.
Scene of the Space Girl. Yeah.
That was so crazy when he mentioned that. I was like, Whoa, you're working on that?
Yeah,
That's interesting. Yeah, he's on my list to have on. I know at one point he was bought out by Warner Studios, or Warner Bros. But I think that was like a 3-year. I don't know what it was called. There was a specific name for it, and whoever I was talking to was like, "Yeah." Originally, they made it sound like we're going to make a film out of it, but it sounded like later it was really just we don't want this to become a big film and compete with our other films,
stuff, yeah.
and so they like bought it out like the rights for 3 years, and then they returned it. I think
that
is
would
the
be
story.
called an option, I believe.
Option,
and,
okay.
And Sycamore Studios, Tim Reckert has that now.
Really cool.
Tim's biggest movie is probably The Star. He directed. I think it was 2018
Animated
2019.
nativity movie. You probably.
yeah. Yes.
I remember seeing
Yeah.
promotion for it. It's like nativity story, but the animals are the leads.
Okay,
Yeah.
and this is the non-controversial one.
this-
Non-controversial.
this is the good
Not
Yeah.
Journey to Bethlehem.
one.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, so he is trying to do that. He's trying to build something like that. And the future for Catholic filmmaking is extremely bright. There's lots of great people who are out there. The equipment is there, cheap now. The people are there. The problem is getting everyone in the same space,
Right?
Because Catholics tend to like to stay near their family, for better or for worse. Catholics. Some of them do uproot and move to somewhere like Hollywood or something, but to get all these people into one spot and say, all right, let's all come to Front Royal, or let's all come to Ohio, or everybody uproot your families and move to Georgia because they've got really good film incentives in Georgia.
They do.
That is hard to do. And that's the thing with Hollywood, where everyone is sort of single until they're in their late 30s. You can uproot your life and move across the country a lot more easy that way. Catholic folks put down roots.
Yeah.
That's going to be the biggest challenge. But I think also getting these people together, the opportunities that we have, even if it's more decentralized, the future for Catholic filmmaking is extremely bright.
Yeah, we had Brian Shields on. He is someone who he was a producer on Therese movie.
Okay.
What were the shorts that he did that you were familiar with? I forget what they were called.
They were. It wasn't shorts, but it was. He produced a series of VHS tapes of live plays.
Oh, yes,
they were
that's
the
right.
one-man shows of a guy named Leonardo de Philippus.
Oh yeah. Did he come to campus one time? He did the Maximilian Kolbe.
yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
And he directed the Therese movie as well. Like that. That's,
Leonardo did direct it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, Brian does this cool thing called Film Camp, and he's located in Jacksonville, Florida. Actually, Isaac Buono, who we had on, he is an alum of that film camp, and now he's a very successful VFX artist.
Does he still work for Marvel or
No, he's moving.
He's
As
on.
he said
He's on
himself,
James Gunn's Superman movie right now, I think.
Yeah. As he said himself,
As you do.
he wants to win an Oscar. So he is very much like looking at his next projects.
Nice.
In that vein. But yeah, just so he does this thing called Film Camp. It's 3 weeks. It costs like $3,000 to go for those 3 weeks. It's like $1,000 per week. But there are a lot of like financial options for people who want to come, who are like options to work while you're doing it. But essentially, yeah, it's 1 week is pre-production, 1 week is production, 1 week is post-production. And so he gets all these high schoolers to come. I know several fellow alums who have gone down, like Sean Hilbert. And they go, and by the end of the 3 weeks, they produce a film. It's just super cool. I wish we had more time. We'll have to have him on again, because like we had a very limited window with him. By the time we wanted to talk about Film Camp, there wasn't much time left. But what he has done, there's this app called School, and he has created this group that he's slowly been adding people. And his dream is to like bring together all the Catholic filmmakers and whatnot. And he just has this space just where people can openly talk about their projects, get advice on things they're working on. And it's very much in its early stages, but I looked at that after I got added to it. I was just like, there's so much potential here for the future, for like being able to just support each other. I think one of the ideas I had when we finished our short film would be to do some sort of premiere with them, with the community there, and then like do like a Q&A, get feedback or whatnot, and maybe just set this precedent for like, okay, if you're working on a short, you can do it here. Do a little Q&A on it, present it, and get feedback or whatnot. So yeah, there's definitely people, Tim Reckert, Brian Shields, who are working in that space who want to unite the Catholic filmmaker Avengers.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like if Angel Studios is able to do it and do crowdfunding and then put out these big hit pieces and big films, that it seems like Catholics should be able to do that too. And maybe the discrepancy comes in where you get a bunch of Catholics in the room and no one can decide on anything or what.
Yeah.
Like what? So you kind of need someone to just say, "I'm starting this studio. We're looking for investors. If you're a director or you're an actor, we want you on board, and we have several projects in the works, and you can all kind of tackle your own project and let people have a little bit more ownership." But yeah, I wonder what the space is. It seems like kids content might be the biggest thing.
Yeah.
Like I know Daily Wire is doing stuff. I've seen some of it. It's not bad, but I think it's difficult when you're not coming from a specific perspective. So they're trying to be conservative, but not in your face conservative, which tends to be kind of like Christian, but not in your face Christian. Yeah. Where it's just a little bit like, I don't know. It doesn't. It just seems like it's a little bit preachy. Yeah. That might depend on the show, but I don't really see a ton of new Catholic stuff happening for kids. I know there's Catholic Saints podcast kind of stuff where there's like Catholic saint stories, and then there's the old, as we mentioned, like CCC, and there's Veggie Tales, and there's Pixar, and there's like the classic Disney, but there's not a ton of new, from what I've seen, like new companies where every 6 months there's like a hit film that you definitely want to take your kids or your siblings to see.
Well, and here's the thing is that we used to in this country have a boom in Catholic kids. It was books at the time, magazines, comic books, back in the early 1900s, really up to the 40s and 50s. And a lot of that stuff is in the public domain now. It's completely unmined by Hollywood or by other people because they just don't care about it. There's a lot of great stories when I'm looking for something to adapt into a screenplay. Often I go back and I read that stuff and I'm like, there's so much potential here. And even the thing is, there's also great stuff for adults. I'm thinking of Robert Hugh Benson's Lord of the World, which is sort of like a dystopia, post-apocalypse kind of thing. Could be an excellent film. There's all sorts of untapped potential, even if you're just looking to adapt stuff. Yeah. I was reading a book about Hitchcock recently, Alfred Hitchcock, and it's surprising the number of his stories that are actually adaptations of plays or of novellas or something else that's brought to him. You think of him because in our modern world, we think of these big franchises and stuff. You look at Hitchcock movies and they seem super original, but no, he took the story from somewhere else and made it this great thing. So I don't see any shame certainly in adapting material. A lot of people talk about being starved for original stories, but all stories eventually come down to there's 12 different stories or something that we've been telling since the beginning of time,
right? Genesis.
Yeah, exactly. You can only be so original. And so but telling things in an original way and not using this IP, this franchise stuff that people are bored with. I think there's a huge market for that, both for kids and for adult content. And if, you could bring out, again, like you said, something every 6 months, as long as people could find it. Yeah. And even if that's premiering it on YouTube or getting something on Amazon Prime or whatever, just as long as you could promote it and you could get it out there. Eventually, hopefully, the idea would be to get into theaters, but theaters are dying, unfortunately. That's going to be a niche hobby in 20 years. Yeah. I will be there all the time. Yeah, I was going to say, I will be there.
They can't hear us.
Yeah. See, that's the thing, though. Places like Royal Cinemas are going to survive. It's the mall metroplexes that are going to die.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because they can't.
Well, they just closed down the IMAX theater up in, is it Manassas?
Yeah, you said drive by it every day. 66.
That massive building. Yeah, I drove by it the other day and it was like 20 years driving by and it's gone.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if that's just an IMAX specific problem, but I think you're right. I think a lot of these kind of chain things are going to close down. Like, I mean, the Alamo probably will be okay.
They just got bought out by Sony.
Oh, did they?
Yeah.
Well, I just saw this. It was like a meme, and it was something like, movie theaters keep trying everything to get people to come, like more comfier chairs, alcohol, food, and really the solution is just make good movies. But that's not really the theater's problem.
Yeah, the theater
but like
can't
if
do
you
that.
actually had good movies coming out and you had a good show every week or even just once a month, people would go and they wouldn't care if you had good snacks or
it's in the
comfortable
bleachers.
chairs. They want to come see this movie. But if all the movies are crap, it's like why
Yeah.
bother? Like,
my favorite thing is going to, and maybe this is only the AMC by where my family lives, but going to the AMC theaters and you see the MacGuffin bar on the left, and so it's like maybe like one person there. It's just like,
yeah,
man, like you were really trying.
yeah.
I mean, honestly, if they showed older, like I know they do a lot of reruns of old movies, but I feel like, you know, we were talking about Interstellar came back in the theaters and it sold out, and Inception came back, and like I would go to theaters if they were showing, you know, Hitchcock on big screen like tomorrow.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people would.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the sort of VHS and then DVD revolution kind of turned theaters off from doing that. Because that used to be the thing, is that re-releases were the big money makers for
Especially
theaters.
like a Disney movie or something.
Yeah, you go, the Disney movie is only in theaters for like 3 weeks every 5 years or something, and then it goes back in the vault. You got to show your kid now. Or something like Gone with the Wind, which comes back out, or Star Wars even was huge in reruns. But then in the 80s and 90s, people were like, oh, I can go to Blockbuster and I can watch whatever movie at home. Well, now we're seeing we can watch whatever we want at home, but it's not all that special anymore. We want to go see, especially the classics, we want to make a night of it. Rather than sit on my couch and kind of just scroll.
Yeah, and I think that it does set up an ambiance. I was on a business trip and I went to Rogan's Comedy Club, and you go in and you have to put your phone in a bag, and you have to give them your credit card, and then you have to have a minimum of 2 drinks, and it was like this whole setup, which I was like, most people would probably think is really weird. I was like, this totally makes sense, because they don't want you on your phone, they don't want you recording. You have to have 2 drinks, so rather than like getting your credit card info and whispering, it's like, no, you just give them your card at the door. You go in, they come up. It's like the Alamo. You fill out a little thing with what you want. They quietly give you a drink, and then you're just watching comedy. And I was like, this is probably the first time in a long time that I've been in a crowded room of people and no one's on their phone.
Yeah.
Now, in a theater, yes, but a lot of times I go to the theater and it's not crowded. But this was like every seat is full. No one's on their phone. Everyone's watching, or they're just like having little side discussions. And I was like, I think that is part of why the theater experience is irreplaceable. You have the big screen, you have the surround sound, you have the popcorn, but when you're at home, and I know all of us do this, you're at home, you're watching a movie, then a text comes in, so you're checking the text, then you start checking something else, and then all of a sudden you're not watching the movie. Maybe the sound isn't great anyway, or you have a small screen, or you're watching a movie on your phone, and eventually it's like, no, like you can watch a TV show at home, you can watch like a little comedy movie, but if you're watching a big cinematic masterpiece, it should be in the theater, or you should buy a projector and try to create the experience if you can't go to the theater. That could be another good list. 100 movies you should see in the theater. Like that have like really incredible soundtracks, or actually Mark
Give
could
the
totally
tech
do
specs
that.
on that. Like this is how you should watch it.
This is where you should sit in the theater.
Lawrence of Arabia.
Yeah, I was literally going to say
Interstellar.
Lawrence of Arabia.
Oh my gosh.
I haven't seen it since I was a kid, and I kind of only want to see it on a really big screen.
I also haven't seen it since I was a kid, and I didn't like it when I was a kid. I think because we had a VHS copy that cut the aspect ratio down to 4:3.
Oh no!
And so you're missing like most of the image, and like the story in Lawrence of Arabia is fine, but it's not strong enough without William. It's William Wyler, right? No, it's David Lean. Yeah. Without his just magnificent imagery.
Oh my gosh.
It's the same thing with
Cut to the Desert.
With Dr. Zhivago, which is one of the 10 top highest grossing movies of all time, but no one's seen it today because you can't watch it on a TV at home. It has to be on this gigantic screen for you to be able to appreciate the level of emotion and drama that's going on in this story.
Sounds like we already have a list going.
Yeah. There we go.
No, the more I look into old movies, there's some just absolute gems of like, you know, historical epics that are even not on like the top tier list that everyone talks about. I'm like,
the old Napoleon.
Yeah, like all these movies from the 60s where they're like just epic war movies.
El
3
Cid.
hours. Yeah, El Cid. I want to do a deep dive on El Cid.
I guess you guys put Ben-Hur on there, but really anything with Charlton Heston, I think is kind of the theme we're picking up on here. 10 Commandments.
I own Charlton Heston actually published his diaries from the 50s through the 70s or the 80s, and I own that book. And it's really interesting to see some of the insights. The movies that we think of like Ben-Hur or the Ten Commandments. We're like, oh my goodness, this is a monumental thing. And at the time, he was like, yeah, it's just another job. Yeah. But then he takes something like El Cid that he pours his entire heart and soul into, or he did a Western with Sam Peckinpah, and I forget what it is off the top of my head, but something where he was like, you can read as he's filming, he's like, this is going to be the thing.
Yeah.
Mm. And no one's ever heard of it today. And it's
the
sort
big,
of heartbreaking there sometimes.
Was that the Big Country? Or is that
it wasn't the Big Country.
Okay.
He was really into the Big Country, and that is one that is well worth anyone's time.
I want to see that one, but I would say that on
amazing
big screen.
film.
Yeah.
I forget what it had something to do with the Civil War and with it. Anyway. But he was one of those things where he was like, I'm super psyched to work with this director and this co-actor, and this story is awesome. And it's like, this is
Nothing.
like when you look on Letterboxd, it's like the 20th film in his filmography or something.
Yeah, that could be another list. 100 Western movies.
Oh, yeah.
Like big, or maybe epics, like whatever.
Oh, yes.
Whatever in the epic genre.
See, I do think you could pull 100 Westerns that Catholics should see.
Oh, yeah.
And it's another one of those things where a lot of Westerns are just the same story, just told in a different way with a different focus, which is, we'd have all sorts of John Ford movies on there. Basically,
High Noon.
High Noon, yes.
Yeah, Man Who Shot Liberty Valance.
Coen Brothers films.
Did I write on High Noon for the blog?
It was for Catholic Exchange, I believe.
That's what it was. It was
Yeah.
for Catholic Exchange, yeah.
You did a Western movie.
Or just on High Noon.
Yeah,
on High Noon.
they asked us to do some movies over there, and we sent them a couple things that were on the list, and then some original
Yeah,
stuff. And High Noon was one of those.
Yeah, I remember sending one of Ben Marsh's articles, and I realized I forgot to ask him. So he saw it appear in Catholic Exchange. He was like, "Did someone just steal this without permission?" I was like, "Oh, Ben, I'm so sorry." Yeah, because I was just thinking, like, okay, what would be good ones?
Yeah.
To take over.
And that's the thing with the book as well. We're gonna have to, since we have so many authors, we're gonna have to reach out to a bunch of people and
Make sure they're okay with publishing.
We hold, as the blog, we hold the copyright to everything. So if we wanted to, we could just publish without permission. But I feel like that's unethical.
Yeah,
You
I imagine most people,
We'll have
if
to do
they're
some
okay with their
editing.
article being on Substack, they're probably okay with it being in a book.
Yeah. But no matter what, I think each article, either if it's a word count thing or something else, is going to have some editing.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah.
I definitely want to talk with the writers if we're taking out stuff that they wrote or change or asking them, hey, can you go back and...
All the disclaimers are taken out.
Yeah.
And or added in.
Or added in. Yeah, right.
But that's why the book project's going to probably take a long time, is because we're going to have to coordinate with, like, the three of us are going to be the editors, and we're going to go in and especially do some copy editing on things.
We want to do it right.
And are you wanting this book to be like this really like big, nice, fancy, glossy, like awesome looking,
Would love that.
Yeah.
whatever, or is this like a I don't know, like what's your vision for how the
We're
book
thinking of
looks?
making it really boring.
Well, not that it needs to be boring.
font, single spaced, like
a lot of that.
No
Yeah.
picture.
A
Very
lot
academic.
Of the, for sure.
That's
So
that's actually what he's working on.
pages
His
footnotes
dissertation.
per article.
the thing about a lot of Catholic movie criticism books that are out there is they're all paperback. They're all like under 200
Yeah,
pages.
like I'm
or
thinking of the
whatever.
one you got. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
not a very flashy cover, even though
exactly.
it seems super interesting to someone like me.
Or even something like that book that Word on Fire just put out.
Popcorn of the Pope.
Popcorn
I
of the Pope,
like
yeah.
that. They have like the presentation's really nice. They got,
Is it? Yeah.
But
But
Like, it's kind of
paperback, right?
it's kind of something
Yeah.
something you want on your shelf.
in their articles, I do have a little thing against reviews that just simply summarize the plot.
Yeah.
Their book
Oh,
is
yeah.
it's a great introduction, but it's very much like this is for somebody who's never heard of like this movie. Here's a summary, and then here's like, okay, this is our thoughts on it. But
Yeah.
I like our blog because we're trying to get.
We don't just.
We're not just summarizing the plot. It's like,
Walter gets on us
Yeah.
for that. So
that's one of my big pet peeves is like if I start reading something, it's just like a plot summary. I'm just like
Right.
Was it after I Confess where I spoiled like the whole end? Because to talk about the themes that I
Yeah.
wanted to talk about the movie, you got to spoil it.
Yeah.
And Walter's like, you spoiled it. I was like, you haven't seen I Confess, Walter? Like,
yeah,
I'm sure he had, and he was just worried about it for
concerned.
other people. But
Yeah.
you know, like,
Well, it's like if you wrote an article on The Sixth Sense and you don't bring up the fact that he's dead. It's
Yeah.
like, well, if you do, that's
What?
the entire movie. But, sorry, spoiler alert. It's been out for a while.
I know. I've actually never seen it, and it's partially because it's so ingrained in the pop culture lore at this point. The
Yeah.
ending, but I do want to see it at some point.
Yeah. I think, my view on that is like if it's been out for a year or more,
Yeah.
I don't really care about spoiling it. Like
Yeah.
you haven't seen it. I'm sorry. I'm not going to be careful. I saw it.
Yeah.
I loved in your article on Casablanca, you were like 80-year-old spoilers follow or something like that.
Yeah. Or
If you haven't gotten around to seeing it by now.
if it's something like spoiling like Citizen Kane, if you just say like Rosebud was a sled.
Yeah.
Wait, what?
But like also people are like, what? Like that's a spoiler?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, you gotta watch it to find out.
Gotta watch it.
Yeah.
Darth Vader is my father, or your father. Yeah. Luke, I am your father.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. I think there's a Peanuts comic. For some reason, like around like 80s or 90s, like Charles Schultz just like started riffing on Citizen Kane whenever he could. And that was my exposure to it growing up, like reading those. And there's just one where like, I think like Pigpen or someone is like in the back of the line, or Linus is just like, hey guys, Rosebud was a sled. And everyone starts booing him. And it's just like, as a kid, I'm like, what does that mean? It's just right over my head.
You gotta love cartoon characters who are who are speaking on current politics,
Calvin.
but then you read it 30 years later.
Yeah.
Calvin and Hobbes. That's a great series.
Yeah, which famously, like George Lucas, Steven Spielberg, like at its height, like wanted to, like everyone wanted to make that to a movie, and Bill Watterson very famously is against any sort of licensing. There's a famous urban legend of someone dropping a big licensor dropping a stuffed Hobbes on his doorstep and him burning it. So talk about someone I admire for his just sticking to creative control and sticking to his art.
So clever and so well educated too. Like the
Yeah.
different things in Calvin and Hobbes or in Peanuts, or if you watch the old Looney Tunes movies, like these people are incredibly well educated. They're referencing classic literature, music, classic films, all this stuff.
Yep.
And you think about kids content, and I say that word, I hate the word content, but I am using it very specifically here. Kids content today.
Yeah.
It's garbage. Like instead of, being very clever with it, they play to the lowest common denominator. They feel like, oh, we can do this quickly and cheaply and not put any effort in it because only kids are going to watch it, and kids don't know anyway.
Yeah, it's like, let's have 2 seconds per shot. Let's make everything like saturated as possible.
Yeah. It's like, the Looney Tunes weren't meant for kids originally, I know, but still, it's something that was a big part of my childhood.
Yeah, and I never really would have realized that like our collective generation was like the last generation to grow up with like hand-drawn animation.
Yeah.
Like that's crazy. Even like watching something like Arthur, like you look at like a recent Arthur episode or something like, or any like kid show growing up, like the animation just looks so bad.
Yeah.
It's just all like done for the cheapest way possible.
Well, even something like CCC, the animation can be kind of bad on those sometimes, but it's got a human kind of imperfection to it,
Yeah.
rather than a slapdash rushed AI or just just generated sort of imperfection.
Like it took effort to.
That's a whole
Yeah,
conversation
yeah.
with Tony Bancroft where we're talking about the hand-drawn and just how there's much more of a human element to it. Versus, they're very personal. You're connected with your art. There's something human that you even lose if you're animating on a computer. But something we talked about, something you talked about a lot about. I think there's still a future in drawn animation for sure.
Oh, yeah.
And we've had some people on the show who are. They're making the short film called The Piano. I forget the lady's name.
Oh my gosh, I feel bad that I forget her name. But yeah, she's working on. I'm just gonna pull it up just because I feel like it's worth promoting her. But she's working on a short film called The Piano, with the Bancroft brothers, who are these legendary Disney Disney actually calls the Bancroft brothers back when they want to work on something hand drawn. Like I think the most recent thing they did was for the 2023 for the 100th anniversary, they did some short film on Disney Plus, which like no one watched or whatever.
Yeah.
But like they brought them back just to do those.
And they did Mary Poppins Returns.
Mary
and
Poppins
things like that,
Returns,
Tony directed Mulan.
Yeah, co-directed Mulan. Yeah,
That was
Disney.
so surreal. That was like one of our first really big guests. Just like
Avery Kroll.
DMing Tony Bancroft, director of Mulan.
Yeah.
Yeah, Avery Kroll was her name.
Avery Kroll, and she's doing a short film called The Piano.
Yeah.
She was such a great guest to talk to. She had such a sort of inspiring story and a real passion for her work.
Oh yeah,
that was really
she's gonna
cool.
go places.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially with the mentoring that she's getting from from the Bancrofts and from Mike Naraki.
Yeah, Mike Naraki, the other co-creator.
Larry the Cucumber.
Yeah, Larry the Cucumber.
okay.
Yeah.
There you go. Do you guys have strong opinions about the use of special effects in movies? Because I think that what we've seen, at least in my opinion, is this radical upgrade in technology. And so you go from movies having really high-end practical effects, or you have Tom Cruise doing his own stunts, and you have like some editing, but pretty minor, to all of a sudden watching movies. And I think Marvel is a really good example of this, where most of the movie is not real. Like you see the actors are there, and then it's just a green screen for the majority of the movie. And there's some scenes they might film in New York or some kind of iconic places, but the rest of it's all fake. And then if you watch the behind the scenes, it's just all these actors standing in a green screen. And it's like, is that really art? I mean, the visual with Marvel specifically, they have such a big budget that they can make the visual effects look really good. But if you have movies or really bad, some of them are bad, but particularly movies that don't have quite as big of a budget, the whole movie looks fake, and it just feels like you're in a video game rather than actually the raw. Like you go through like the old Alfred Hitchcock movies, and like if there's an explosion, they blew up a building, or like the famous train wreck that's like was really expensive to do. It's like they actually put money into making things look real, and I think that's maybe why Christopher Nolan is one of the reasons people like him so much, is that he tries to have practical effects as much as possible.
But even when he uses digital effects, that's the thing, is that there's an intentionality behind it.
Seamless.
It's an extension of his art. He's got this vision in his head where he's like, okay, we're going to use this digital effect, and we're going to use it right here in this way, and we're going to do it right. Whereas with Marvel and a lot of the other things, I feel like that vision isn't there. Yeah. They shoot something on green screen, and they're like, all right, and we'll put something in post, and we'll figure it out later. But that leads to, like with the Captain America movie, a whole bunch of reshoots you've got to do.
So many reshoots.
Because
you're talking about the most recent one?
Yeah.
It's not even directed by the same
person.
Yeah. The person who's credited as directing that, like, I was reading an article, it's like, it's not his movie anymore.
Yeah.
Like, really, it's not his movie.
Because when you say, oh, we'll just put this in post, and then you go in post and you're like, oh, actually, this isn't the vision, then you've got to come back and you've got to spend all this money to do reshoots. Whereas if you come in the way that Hitchcock used to do, or that Christopher Nolan did, or that Peter Jackson did on The Lord of the Rings, they spent so much time storyboarding every single shot of that film. They had concept artists who just drew, and I've got books of The Lord of the Rings concept art, drew gorgeous picture after picture before they started filming a thing. So even when you're going to use digital effects, and there's some Lord of the Rings stuff that's on blue screen, you look at the behind the scenes of that, and there's some big blue screen scenes, but they did build a lot of it practically. They had the vision. They knew we can accomplish this in camera, and we can accomplish this with digital effects, and that's the vision. Whereas something like Ant-Man Quantumania, you watch that movie and you can see there wasn't a vision when they filmed it. They just were like, all right, we're going to have our 2 or 3 actors do their little thing, and
Bill
then,
Murray shows up.
Yeah, and we'll figure out what the quantum realm looks like later.
Yeah,
and
it looks like Spy Kids 3.
Exactly. Yeah, because later they didn't have a vision. They still didn't have a vision.
Yeah.
And so even though that's one of the most expensive visual effects movies of all time, just because you can do anything, sometimes you need that sort of limiting factor. Those restraints that tell you, all right, you can't do anything. You've got to work within these limits, and that can cause some really great creativity. Whereas when you're told, we can make whatever the heck we want appear behind Paul Rudd in this scene.
Right.
We don't have to think about it now. Then later you'll be like, oh shoot, what do we put behind Paul Rudd? I don't
it's
know.
kind of like the death of practical effects, and also I know like a lot of actors today, I think probably are good at memorizing lines, and they are attractive people, and they can deliver lines in a funny way or kind of in the mode that is appropriate for the movie. But a lot of them don't really have what the classic like Hollywood superstar had. Like most of them can't tap dance, most of them can't sing, and you can see that in like any movie that involves singing. It's always dubbed over, almost always. Then you go back to people like Gene Kelly or Fred Astaire or whatever, and it's like they could dance, they could sing, they did all their own effects, and this is a classic movie. And like it was them. They were the talent, and now all of a sudden it's more of like they're a celebrity, and we kind of brought them in to get like more views on the movie, and then the rest of it we just edit and kind of fake.
Well,
and I think that people don't buy that. It seems inauthentic.
And many of them these days, they can't even move their faces because of the amount of plastic surgery that these people go through. And it's not even like the middle-aged or older people. Even the very young people are getting all the, and it destroys this sort of range of acting you can even do with your face. Like, forget tap dancing.
Right. Try smiling.
Yeah, exactly. You can't really give a big grin. And I've seen videos on YouTube that compare actresses from the 50s, the 60s, even when acting was even a little bit more stagey than it is today. They look so much more natural and they're so much more expressive. Whereas someone like a Natalie Portman or a
Emma Stone
or the Australian actress.
Oh, Margot Robbie.
No, who's married to Tom Cruise.
Nicole Kidman.
Nicole Kidman, yeah. You look at their performances now, and, you know, it's Nicole Kidman's face, but you can't see expression. You can't see emotion. And so you get fewer close-ups because their faces are so unnaturally perfect that you don't want to show it off. You've got to get everything
Zendaya
a little
problem.
further. Yeah, exactly.
Very limited range.
Yeah,
Right.
And it's for some of these actresses who used to have a great range.
Yeah.
But now, and actors have this problem too. I think that there are certainly older actors. I think Brad Pitt has had some work done, and you can see the range has limited over the years. I don't think it's because they're aging. I think it's because they're trying not to age.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like Tom Cruise is one of the only like big Hollywood actual superstars that still acts, still runs, still has a vision for his movies, still, and like all the films he puts out are just like, this is just entertaining. I'm not saying that Mission Impossible 7 is going to be the biggest blockbuster, that's going to stand all time, but it's like, it was great. Like, all of the Mission Impossible movies are just entertaining. They're just classic spy movies with good effects, with edge of your seat action. And then there is something I think that is really genuine about him doing his own stunts. I think people write that off as like him being reckless or him like wanting to show off
Scientology.
And and there might be something to that, but I also think that there is something that's genuine and like you see a true passion for wanting to create good art and wanting to actually entertain. Like it's called entertainment.
Yeah.
It's like he actually wants to entertain people. He wants people to be like, is he going to fall off this plane? And he's going to go do it even though he might fall off that plane because it's worth it to have this shoot. Because why do it on the ground with a fake animatronic? Like it's just not worth it. And I think that there's actually something pretty deep in that sentiment of him to be like, I want to keep doing all of this stuff as long as I can and continue producing my own stuff.
So I'd say there's probably 3 people in Hollywood who right now who really are tapped into really showing audiences something they've never seen before, and that is the key to their success, and they're very passionate about that. And it's funny, 2 of them fall on the more practical spectrum and one falls on more the fantasy CGI spectrum, and one is James Cameron. Okay. And obviously he's locked into doing Avatar movies forever. Yeah. But he takes like his time and he gets the CGI like looking incredible. And he is very genuinely committed to showing people something they've never seen before. That's why his movies clear 2 billion every time. And people want to see it in IMAX and 3D or whatever. And then you have Nolan and Cruise. And it's so funny that they've never actually done a movie together yet.
Not yet.
And really the alternative to the spectacle of Marvel is now what people want to like. People want to go to a theater is to see something done for real, and that's why Oppenheimer got to like I think almost $1 billion, and that's why the Odyssey is probably going to definitely clear $1 billion, especially if it's rated PG-13. It's almost a no-brainer. That's going to clear $1 billion, but really, just to be able to go and see Tom Cruise do something that's like the newest movie, he looks like he's going to do some plane walking and stuff. Like, people are going to go to see this. I think Tom Cruise and Christopher Nolan are very aware of like, okay, we're asking people to come to a theater to see our movie. We're going to show them something they've never seen before versus like versus like Marvel or something, just like give them slop. They'll show up anyway. Now people aren't showing up for the slop anymore. And I think this is where Nolan and Criste sort of rise. It's crazy that Nolan is a brand like on level, he is a brand at this point that is on level with Marvel. That like that movie is going to open the same week as Spider-Man 4, and those are 2 Tom Holland vehicles, and it is a real question of like, okay, like this is actually like Spider-Man actually has to contend with this, and I feel like Spider-Man is actually going to probably move its state because of it. And all of that I think comes back to authenticity, and you see this with Disney just remaking all of its old IP. Maybe there's a good way to do that, or maybe there's a good way to do a Cinderella 5 and you do another story. But really, the way to make content is to come up with a new story. Yeah. And like you said, maybe all these stories boil down to the same 10 or 12 stories, but to actually say we're going to make a movie about a girl doing this in this country, there's original songs, original acting, it's not diversity, any of that stuff. It's just a legitimate story with authentic actors and a director who has a vision. That's going to be popular, and I think Disney is starting to realize that, because like the new Snow White that came out, they're like, number one, you're just remaking the old movie. You're not creating a part 2. You're not twisting it. You're not anything. Getting rid of most of the songs.
Yeah, you're just getting rid of the songs, and then you're making the Snow White character brown. Yeah. So now I think Michael Knowles is referring to her as like brown beige or sand beige or something like that. Where he's like, the entire story of Snow White is for this character to be white. Yeah. And that's not saying that other people who aren't white are lower, but yeah, like who knows? But that's the story. It's literally in the title. And so to remake it and then say we're going to make this about a black Snow White or about a whatever, that's not the movie. Make another movie about that character, and that's totally fine. But I think people just don't buy that inauthenticity of it. It just comes off as lazy. It really does when you're just remaking old movies, and it's animated, and you have all these kind of like diversity actors who aren't even really good at acting, and it's just then people I think start returning kind of to the sources of like, okay, what are some good movies? I want to actually watch a good movie or like good kids content and not this garbage.
And that's where we come in.
And that's where your movies come in.
Yeah.
Snow White Part 3.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to let you guys go. Thanks for coming.
Yeah.
Sam, Joe, Cameron, it's been a pleasure talking to you, and I look forward to all the upcoming stuff. Where can people follow you on Instagram and Substack, and what's a good way to get in contact with you?
So the Substack address is 100catholicmovies.substack.com. That's the number 100, 100catholicmovies.substack.com. I think we're on Instagram and Twitter. Is that right?
Instagram is 100 Movies Catholic.
Okay. And then I think the Twitter is like something similar. It took me a while to find it, but
it's kind of defunct right now.
It's defunct.
I mean, maybe we'll revive it in the future, but
okay.
I think
okay. But you do have a Twitter presence.
We do. It's there.
Okay.
X, whatever. We're the podcast 100 Movies Every Catholic Should See podcast is on Spotify, Apple, iTunes,
Amazon.
and Amazon, and then you can find our YouTube channel. We wanted to get a bit broader, a bit more big tent, break away from the 100 Movies label, and so it's under the name Reconquista Media. And that's going to be sort of the bigger, more umbrella brand for future projects if we make movies or if we branch out from, just the 100 Movies stuff. Reconquista Media is what we're looking to push in the future.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thanks for coming on. Thanks everyone for tuning into the Doing Virtue podcast, and we'll see you next time. Cheers.